We're now at the show Justice League. I watched Justice League almost as much as Batman the Animated Series when I was younger, since I had the episodes of both shows on DVD, and some of those episodes were even on the Cocoa Pops DVDs as I mentioned in my BTAS video. I'm very nostalgic for this show, and I think a lot of people are. This show is what really got me to like the Justice League, and I'm really looking forward to watching this whole show again to see if it's really as good as I remember it being. If you haven't seen my other episode ranking videos, what I do is I go through every episode of the show, talk about them, and even rank them at the end of the video. To clarify, this is by airing order, not by the production order of the episodes. So before I get into these episodes, please consider supporting my Patreon or channel membership so you can get some cool little benefits for as little as $1 a month. Anyways, I don't want to waste too much time. Let's start off Justice League with... Damn, so we're straight into it with this episode, where two astronauts are on Mars where they end up seeing a certain type of rock. When they pick it up, it creates a hole where one of them named Carter falls down into some kind of cave. He ends up finding some wall with an alien language on it, and as he finds the giant door, he opens it up where something comes out as we then get into the intro of the series. Interesting start to the episode, but the intro of this show hits so hard. Even with the dated 3D models aside, it's great, and we also get the title of the episode and the intro of the show. Better than a black screen, I guess. But we time skip 2 years into the future at a Wayne Labs facility in Metropolis, as Batman's lurking in the facility to see 3 people as they seem to be aliens, where they grab a hidden alien device and put it on a giant satellite as Batman approaches them. Damn, I love this Batman design. Besides from BTAS, this design is peak Batman. I also fuck with the blue highlights a lot. But they end up fighting as Superman then comes in to help, and why does he have cheek lines now for some reason? Even though this takes place not that long after Superman the Animated Series. Anywho, Superman gets some random visions and faints as the aliens make a run for it as they activate the device. Batman and Superman escape as the satellite blows up, and we see the 3 people being able to morph themselves since 2 of them were stuck together. As they get away, Batman talks to Superman as Superman explains that they have to leave, but gives Batman a watch that will help him contact Superman if he needs his help. Hold on. This isn't Tim Daly voicing Superman now, is it? This time around, it's George Newbern that has come in to voice the Man of Steel. The reason why this happens is because Tim Daly, after finishing Superman the Animated Series, started the remake of the TV series called The Fugitive. He started in the 2000s series, which apparently there are quite a few remakes of this original 1963 series. Anywho, we then see the UN arguing about lethal weapons, as they're afraid of possible alien invasions where the senator named Carter... Hold on, wasn't that the astronaut at the start? Oh yeah, it is, since he mentions that he survived the attack. But he reveals that Superman is their defense against any alien invasions, as Superman promises the world leaders that he will defend the planet no matter the cost. We see that over 6 months, Superman's been disarming the army's bombs, as we then see Clark have the same visions as earlier when he's gone to bed. As that's going on, Batman finds the remote control for the aliens' device as they walk in. He ends up finding the 3 people that the aliens took over in big sacks as he frees one of them, but an alien dog attacks him. After Batman beeps for Superman's help, we see him arrive as Batman's stuck under some rubble, knocked out, and as he sees Batman, a meteor crashes into Metropolis. Superman goes to look at it with Batman in his arms, and this moment's great where Superman hands Batman to the ambulance.
Don't even think about it.
So Superman goes to the meteor where a giant alien comes out as it tries to destroy everything around it, as Superman tries to fight it. He gets his ass kicked as Batman then uses the Batwing to try and fight it, where Superman comes back into the fight. As they're fighting, another one comes out, but Superman gets the visions again and decides to fly away as Batman goes to find him. We get a news report that these aliens are attacking everywhere worldwide, as Batman ends up finding more sacks with people in it and finds Superman breaking down a door. Batman questions what he's doing as Superman shows him that the government has kidnapped an alien, and it's apparently their only hope. Superman got the idea that he's being contacted telepathically as he reveals himself to be J'onn J'onzz, the Martian Manhunter, which surprisingly that name is not referenced once in the show. The episode then ends with Superman, Batman and J'onn trying to escape as the army's revealed to be the aliens in disguise. Alright, this is a solid start to the show. It was definitely a good call to focus on Batman and Superman in this episode, since those are the 2 characters that have already had plenty of development in this universe, but you get to see hints of what will eventually be the Justice League. You see faces like the Flash, Wonder Woman, and obviously J'onn J'onzz, and I'm definitely interested to see how the rest of this show goes and how this 3-parter goes. God, it's kind of weird to say that we've got a 3-parter in this universe. The only other one we've had before this was World's Finest and Superman the Animated Series. Every other kind of parter episode has just been 2 parts. But let's see how it goes with... Instead of picking up where we left off, we actually start on the island of Themyscira, as a hooded figure walks up to a statue as we see that it's Diana, as they grab the Wonder Woman costume and the Lasso of Truth. We then go to where we left off as Superman, Batman and J'onn J'onzz have to fight their way out of their situation. J'onn gets wounded as Batman tries to get him out of there, where Superman follows, but as they're escaping, the alien ships come out to fight them. Eventually, the Batwing gets shot down as Green Lantern, being John Stewart, and Hawkgirl come out to save them and stop the aliens. They end up doing so as the Flash, and even Wonder Woman comes in to help them, as they don't recognize her since none of them have ever seen Wonder Woman. After the fight, Diana explains who she is and where she's from, and that where she's from, she's not meant to interrupt with the rest of the world, but Diana felt like she needed help, so she did. Jean ends up explaining everything that's happening at the moment, as he explains that the aliens attacked them on Mars about 1,000 years ago, as they wanted to take over it. Eventually, the Martians try to attack them, and Jean was the only one of his kind to survive after releasing a nerve gas against the aliens. He watched over them to make sure that they didn't come back, but after 500 years, Carter opened the door, which released the aliens, and Jean came to warn Earth about them. As it's going on, some giant alien device is released in Metropolis, as it makes a giant thundercloud to block out the sun since they're weak against it. They all then decide to try and stop the aliens by splitting up into twos, and taking out the devices in different countries, since the one in Metropolis isn't the only one. They're all trying to take them out as Batman, Wonder Woman, and John Jones are in Egypt, Superman and Hawkgirl are in Metropolis, and Flash and GL are in some forest. Superman and Hawkgirl get knocked out as Jean senses it, as they figure out that they need to get rid of the core to destroy the device. Jean ends up getting knocked out after taking the core out of the holder, where Wonder Woman manages to get out with Jean. As she does, Batman gets stuck behind the wall as he has to try and fight off the aliens, and that's how the episode ends. Really leaves you with a big cliffhanger. Honestly better than the first part, since we get to know the Justice League members and what their personalities are like. I'm not interested in these aliens invading Earth at all, since they don't have personalities, but the episodes work for what they are. Last thing I want to mention is that I love the voice cast. Obviously, we have Kevin Conroy back as Batman, but the rest of the voice actors are fantastic. You have George Newbern doing Superman, as I mentioned earlier, Susan Eisenberg as Wonder Woman, Phil LaMarr as Green Lantern, Carl Lumbly as John Jones, Michael Rosenbaum as the Flash, and Maria Canals-Barrera as Hawkgirl, and they're all excellent. When I hear the voices of these characters, they really are the definitive versions to me, in the same vein as Kevin Conroy with Batman. They're fantastic. As the episode goes, it's above the first part. Part 3 starts with technicians fixing the satellite at Wayne Labs since that got destroyed in the first part, as they detect a giant alien ship coming for Earth. We see that people are running crazy around the streets as they think that the world will end soon, as we see Wonder Woman and John as the Flash and GL approach them since they're going to try and save Superman and Hawkgirl. Flash is going to be the diversion that gives the rest of them an opportunity to go into the alien device to try and save them. He catches up to them as he deals with one of the ships, where Jean manages to knock two of the aliens out. The giant ship arrives as they're trying to get in to save Superman and Hawkgirl, and when they do, it seems to be a trap where they all get knocked out. When they wake up, we see that one of the aliens is actually Senator Carter, since he never got back from Mars. We then see their leader, named the Imperium, as they seem to be some weird cell-like creature as they speak to Jean since they've met before. They end up sucking him aside as Batman comes in and manages to mess with the crystal controlling the device, which reverses the effects in the sky. When the sun comes out, it starts to melt them until they finally find some shade as the Justice League fights the aliens. Eventually, the Justice League just keeps ripping holes through the device to try and melt the aliens, as Imperium makes a run for the ship. Wonder Woman and Hawkgirl end up stopping the ship as the rest of them save the people that are stuck in the sacks. They save them as the device blows up where the giant ship leaves the planet. In a news report, it shows that the Justice League got rid of the other aliens that were still on the planet. After that, Batman then gets the idea to use a watchtower of his as their headquarters, as Superman talks about how they just saved the world together, and this exchange is hilarious.
What? Like a bunch of super friends?
More like a Justice League.
They end up agreeing besides Batman. He says that when they need the help, he will help, but he just isn't a people person. The episode then ends as Superman gives Jean a speech about how he could learn to call Earth his new home, as his life on Mars is long gone, and Jean ends up joining them. This is the best out of the 3 parts. Mainly for the end of this episode where you get to see the League start to form. It gets you excited for what's to come with this universe's Justice League, and I definitely want to see where it goes. Not too much else to say since it's like the other 2 episodes, but I will say the twist that Carter was one of the aliens was extremely predictable. I just knew that was the case from the start. But this is the best episode yet. Alright, a 2-parter all about Green Lantern? I was a bit hesitant at first about this, but nah. I think it was needed since a lot of people don't know about John's backstory or even Green Lantern's backstory, so it feels like it really needed to be in the show. So it starts with an alien courtroom? As the persons on the screen are waiting to put some criminal on trial, as they get the people called the Manhunters to find John Stewart and put him on trial. You know what? I really hope that this show keeps doing these little scenes to set up the episode before the intro plays. It works really well. Also, was I wrong about the title of the episode being in the intro? I guess so, since it shows up after the intro anyways. But we see John walking around as he sees a man robbing a store as he decides to use his ring to stop him and easily does so. After shooting a kid's basketball, he meets up with someone that he knows named Mr. McGee, as he's apparently the kid's grandson, but after that we go to the watchtower. At the watchtower, Flash and Hawkgirl are talking as Flash is curious about what she used to do since she was apparently a detective. When John walks in, alarms go off as they see the Manhunters entering Earth, as they warn the others, but Flash, Hawkgirl and John go to stop them. We go back to John as McGee's grandson is getting a haircut, as the Manhunters are trying to approach John as the three of them interrupt. They fight for a little, but the Manhunters manage to knock them all down as they go for John. Eventually Superman comes in to help them, but he manages to throw them around for a little bit until John comes in to see what the Manhunters want. They find out that they want his ring and for him to go with them, as he ends up doing so, where the League's members are confused why he obliged to their requests. John arrives on a planet known as Ajuris 5, as the Guardians from the planet Oa are looking over this going on. Eventually he sees a few other Green Lanterns as one of them says that John's a disgrace to the Corps, as John's kept in a holding cell whilst waiting for his trial. We go back to the League as John senses what John is looking at whilst being held, as they find out what planet John's being held at. They arrive on the planet as they have to fight off a few ships and eventually stop them, but as the Flash lands the plane, men try to shoot at them but they eventually stop them. At the trial, we see the League's members break in as Superman tells them that they're John's friend and that they're here to listen in to see what this case is about. We then get a testimony from a criminal where apparently John was stopping them from stealing weapons, and as he shot his light at one of the other ships, it bounced off and destroyed the planet Ajuris 4 by accident. When the court finds that out from the criminal's testimony, they take a break where the League members talk to John, as the episode ends with him saying that he did it and that he's guilty. I actually like this episode a lot. I was going into this one thinking that it would be weaker than the first 3 episodes, but no. I think this one's the best so far. The whole courtroom situation is very interesting, and especially how John basically handed himself over to the Manhunters, it's honestly really interesting. I don't have much else to say, but the conflict between the different characters is good in this episode, and it definitely goes at the top. So we start this episode right where we left off, as Superman's skeptical about what's happening at the moment, as both Superman and John go to investigate the planet's wreckage, as the criminal sees them leaving. Hawkgirl and Flash have to try and slow down the court case so Superman and John have more time, so in the court case, Flash ends up accidentally getting himself to be John's lawyer. Court tells him that if he helps John and they lose the case, the Flash will get the same penalty as John. Whilst that's going on, Hawkgirl confronts the other Lanterns by calling them all cowards, and eventually kicking the shit out of them after they make fun of John. Eventually, Kilowog comes out and stops the fight as he admits that Hawkgirl's right, as he goes to help John with Hawkgirl. As Kilowog gets into the courtroom, Superman and John find out that there's a moon still in orbit of the planet that was destroyed, which doesn't make sense since it would have gone out of orbit if the planet blew up. Eventually, at the court case, the Guardians come in to help John, as Superman and John find a giant device that seems to be some kind of projector that faked the planet's destruction. The criminal of the court case tries to kill them both, but Hawkgirl comes out with a ship to stop him, and eventually does so after shooting his ship down. Hawkgirl found out that he did it to help the Manhunters as they can take over the planet and potentially destroy the Green Lanterns and the Guardians. At the courtroom, they eventually come to the conclusion that John's guilty, where both John and the Flash are going to be killed. As they're about to be killed with a deadly gas, Superman and John save them as Superman shows the court what he found out. After being proved innocent, the Guardians try to go back to Oa as soon as possible, but the League stopped them, where the Guardians actually explain that they created the Manhunters. They created them because they thought they would be good peacemakers, but they couldn't understand good and evil properly. On Ola, the Manhunters are attacking as the League comes in with the other Guardians to take out the Manhunters. Eventually, the other Lanterns come in with Hawkgirl, but one of the Manhunters manages to enter the Lantern Corps as he absorbs the full power of the Corps, but John says the Green Lantern Oath and manages to defeat him. The episode ends with John talking to the other League members as he's still in disbelief that the League believed him even when he didn't believe in himself. This episode slaps. The same compliments with the first part apply here, but I do think it's even better than the first part. The reveal that the planet didn't blow up is really well done, and even the twist that the Guardians created the Manhunters is really neat. There's just more great character stuff, especially with how this two-parter develops John. You really get a sense of his personality in this two-parter. Also, let me just say it, John is an awesome Green Lantern, and there's no ifs or buts about that. You can't really argue against me on that one. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if the next episodes are just developing the League's members like this two-parter. But you know what? I'm down for that. This episode goes at the top. The enemy below starts with the submarine underwater, as some kind of submarine crashes into them to the point where their sub sinks, as we see Aquaman in control of the other sub. Justice League responds to their stress beacon, but when they arrive, they have to fight off a few of Aquaman's ships. Their ship blows up as they get out to disarm the other ships, where they easily do so. When they do, other ships arrive as Aquaman tells them to leave, but Superman and Wonder Woman end up convincing him to let them save the people on board the sunken ship. Aquaman makes sure that they don't take the sub with them, as they agree that they'll take the people on board to safety. When they do, Superman talks to Aquaman saying that he should air his grievances with the world's leaders. Aquaman tells him that he doesn't want to beg for them, but Superman tells him to ask them like a king. Back in Atlantis, we see Aquaman on his throne, as General Brack tells him that they have the tech to wipe their threats off the face of the Earth, but Aquaman tells him to wait. We also see that Aquaman's with Mira and even had a kid with her as Aquaman puts the baby to bed. After John argues with the League about leaving the sub down in the water, we see him sneak past the Atlantean guards to go look at the sub. Whilst that's going on, Aquaman arrives on the surface, where we go back to the watchtower as John tells the others that all the plutonium's gone from the ship. When he does, they say that Aquaman got into the World Assembly, so the League go to sort him out as he basically says what he wants, but the leaders argue about it. The League tries to talk to him, but he ends up just leaving, and when he does, someone tries to assassinate him with a missile. When he gets taken to hospital, General Orm tries to order the army to attack the surface for what happened. At the hospital, after the doctors fail to help Aquaman, Batman ends up coming up with an idea to submerge him in a tank full of salt water, as that seems to stabilize him. He ends up waking up where John tries to question him about the plutonium, but he's too worried about trying to find out who killed him as Batman says that he can help. They come up with an idea to move him to a different facility to see if the assassin attacks again. When they do, he tries to kill Aquaman as the League goes after him. But we find out that it's Deadshot as he makes a run for it in his motorbike, but eventually after a long chase on bike, foot and car, Superman gets him. Now here's a scene that's constantly shared around, and for good reason, because it's great, as Batman manages to make him tell the others how he got paid since he won't tell them who paid him.
Let me give you one word of advice.
Okay. I'll tell.
What did he say?
You don't want to know.
They find out that he managed to get paid in Spanish doublons, as they figure out that someone from Atlantis paid Deadshot. When Aquaman arrives back in Atlantis, we see that Orm's taken over as king, where Aquaman's men have turned on him, and that's how the first part ends. These episodes just get better and better. Even though I'm not a fan of Aquaman as a character so far, this episode's interesting, especially the second half, since there's a mystery as to who tried to kill Aquaman, and eventually who would have paid Deadshot to do it. The reveal that it was Aquaman's brother, Orm, makes sense, and I'm definitely interested to see how the two-parter ends. Best episode in the show so far. The second part starts right where we left off as the men take Aquaman away, as Orm orders General Brack to get his troops ready. Mira comes out and finds out what Orm's up to, besides Aquaman being back, as Orm took her baby and hid him for his protection. The League try to find Aquaman as the armies try to attack them, but they end up getting knocked out by some of the bombs as they get taken to Orm, as they say that they came to warn Aquaman about the threat against his life. Orm ends up sending them all to be killed, and for some reason Atlantis has a tank to make people drown, even though Atlanteans can breathe underwater. But as the League's about to drown, Mira knocks the two guards out and frees the League, as she needs their help since Aquaman's life is at risk. We then see Aquaman as he's chained up, where Orm shows him that he has his baby. As it's happening, we see men going after the League and Mira, as we then get back to Aquaman as Orm says that he's going to let the baby die with him, so he will be the rightful heir to the throne. Orm then sends him hurtling down to a bit of lava below, as Aquaman manages to get free and save the baby by cutting off one of his hands, as he shows Mira that he saved him. Damn, that's hardcore as fuck. So he ends up getting the wound fixed up as the League says that they're going to help stop Orm, as Aquaman gets a hook replacement for his arm. Aquaman goes to stop him as the League follows and helps, where they fight the army for a while. Eventually, Aquaman gets to the Doomsday device as Orm attacks him. They end up fighting for a while as GL and Batman come in to try and stop the device, whilst Aquaman and Orm are fighting. After fighting for a while, Orm ends up falling down to the abyss after where he was standing gave way, as Aquaman gets his trident back and they manage to stop the device. The episode ends with Aquaman regretting his fear of the surface, as all he ever wanted was peace and security for Atlantis. I'm really starting to like this version of Aquaman since he has an actual character. I was worried in the first part that Aquaman was going to be just as boring as he was in Superman the Animated Series, but we start to see a bit of character development here and it's good. I think he's a solid character since he just wants what's best for Atlantis, and I actually like how he sacrificed his hand just to save his son. Also comes up with a good reason as to why Aquaman has a hook for a hand. I probably do prefer the first part overall, so it's above in Brightest Day Part 2, but below The Enemy Below Part 1. Paradise Lost starts with a massive storm in Beach City, as we see different people being affected by it where it ends up being a hurricane. This truck ends up having a stop sign break through their windshield, as they accidentally crash off the side of this bridge where Wonder Woman and Superman save them. Wonder Woman ends up saving a girl from a tree that's about to fall over, and after that, Wonder Woman's thinking about going back to see her mother, Hippolyta. By the way, I'll just say her mother or Wonder Woman's mother instead of Hippolyta, because that name sucks and it's too hard to say all the time. I probably said it wrong then anyways. You'll find out. And she decides to go see her mother as Superman convinces her to do so. We then see Wonder Woman going back to Themyscira as she tries to figure out what to say to her mother, but she then sees that the island's been attacked. Most of the buildings are destroyed as she sees that all of her sisters turn into stone, where she then finds her mother as a stone statue where someone tries to attack her. They fight until Wonder Woman manages to knock the sorcerer down and interrogate him. She says that if she harms him, he will keep them all as stone statues, where he explains that his name is Felix Faust, and he came here to get an ancient relic since he's seeking ultimate knowledge. That's Robert Englund, isn't it? Yeah, I know that voice all too well. What a beautiful man. There are a few pieces to the relic, but the first one's on their island as he wants her to help him find the other pieces, and if she does, he'll make them all come back. He frees her mother from the spell to show Wonder Woman that he can free them, but turns her back into stone to make Wonder Woman go and help him. She reluctantly agrees, but he says that she has 24 hours to find the relics, as he gives her crystals that will help her find the relics. Wonder Woman leaves as Felix talks to some being which is meant to be Hades, as he explains his plan, and if he fails, he's basically dead. As Wonder Woman's finding the relics, she asks Batman to look up the name Felix Faust to get more information about him, and she then arrives at some museum after one of the crystals starts to light up. Wonder Woman finds one of the relics on display, but accidentally trips an alarm when trying to get it, and when she takes it, a giant statue known as Gaia comes to life and attacks her. After a bit of a fight, Wonder Woman ends up destroying the giant statue and taking the relic. When she takes the relic, Superman shows up trying to find out what's going on. Eventually, Wonder Woman tells a few of the League's members what's going on as they arrive not long after, where they end up agreeing to help Wonder Woman find the relics in time. The Flash and John find one and have to fight a giant snake, as Wonder Woman and Superman find one in the Mole Metropolis. When they find the relic, they get flashbanged where they see one another as monsters, but they see themselves as their usual selves. We go back to the Flash and John as John manages to one-hit KO the giant snake, and back at the mall, Superman realizes that the monster he's fighting is actually Wonder Woman. He eventually gets her to realize that she's fighting Superman as he points to a mirror, where the episode then ends with Felix talking to Hades as he explains that the relics will be soon in their hands and that the world will be theirs. Honestly, not the best episode in the show, but it's still good. I like how this episode has Wonder Woman going back to see her mother since she feels bad for just leaving her. It's definitely a pleasant surprise having Robert Englund voice the main antagonist of this episode, but I honestly hope that the character gets a bit better in the second episode. Besides me loving the voice, there isn't really much to the character besides from your typical evil sorcerer. I actually like how the League's members help Wonder Woman when she explains what's going on, and it actually shows that besides from being members in a team that they actually care about one another. It goes above Secret Origins Part 3, but below In Blackest Night Part 1. Part 2 picks up right where we left Superman and Wonder Woman, as Batman finds out information about Faust, since in small little scenes in the last episode he interrogated a man off screen named Professor Ehrlich. They end up going to Felix's office, and this little moment where Batman gets shitty at the Flash for touching stuff is great.
Don't touch that.
Oops.
Don't touch anything. We don't know what kind of powers we're dealing with.
Batman then explains that Felix was an archaeologist, and then he got fascinated with mystic arts and took revenge on people that thought he was crazy for getting into it. Apparently Felix was looking at a Tartarus in the Pit of Lost Souls, and when Wonder Woman hears that, she starts to explain that a woman fell in love with Hades. When she fell in love with him, he tricked her into opening the gates of Olympus, where he ended up starting a war with the Titans, but lost. After losing the war, Zeus sent Hades into a pit of souls to rule over the dead forever. When Hades was sent down into the pit, the woman scattered the keys to Olympus all over the planet, as the League gathered the information and realized that they've been finding the pieces to the key all along. Superman and Batman explain to Wonder Woman that if she gives Felix the key, it could mean the end of the world, but she has to give it to him to save her mother and sisters. Wonder Woman goes to Felix as she has the key under her blanket. He's impressed that she's already back since she still has a few hours left. She reveals the key to Felix as she requests that he frees her mother before she hands over the key, and he does so she gives Felix the key. Felix is about to use the amulet again to make them both turn into stone, as the Flash manages to steal it off him, but the Justice League come in and start to attack Felix. Also, did they really have to reuse a shot of the Flash from the Superman the Animated Series episode Speed Demons? It really sticks out like a sore thumb since it looks completely different in every way. I guess they wanted to recycle their scenes from the past, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It looks awful. Anywho, Felix manages to keep the League busy with some giant plants, as he manages to teleport away after knocking out Wonder Woman's mother. Wonder Woman knows where he's gone as she directs the League to the gates, where we then see Felix use the key to open the doors, as he has her mother chained up. When he does, Hades comes out and this design goes so hard. But Felix ends up getting ultimate knowledge from Hades, and when he does, he pretty much just dies right there and then. Wonder Woman comes out and frees her mother as Hades goes after them. The League come in to help fight Hades, but basically do nothing against him. Hades brings an undead army to life as they start to rise from the ground and attack the League. The undead army just keep on coming, where Felix gets up and manages to put a spell on Hades. When he hits him with a spell, we see him for his apparent true self, where he's a werewolf-like creature, as he shoots a fireball at Felix. Eventually, Wonder Woman's mother tells her to destroy the key, and she ends up doing so as Hades is being sucked back into the pit. Felix gets sucked into the pit since he basically just becomes dust, but when Hades is being sucked into the pit, he gets a hold of her mother, as Wonder Woman manages to save her just in time before the doors closed. After walking out of the building, Flash pulls out the amulet, and as they're trying to figure out a way to bring back Wonder Woman's sisters, the spell's effects wear off since Felix died. The League end up accepting her Pollard as gratitude and offerings, and she then says to Wonder Woman that she's happy that she came back to save her, but she's exiled from Themyscira for bringing in outsiders. The episode ends with Wonder Woman accepting her judgment as she says goodbye and walks away to go back with the League. Well shit, this part's even better than the first part. I love it how the episode actually decides to make Hades escape the Pit of Lost Souls and be a massive threat to the League, and let me say it again, the design of Hades looks so good, even in his wolf form. I'm surprised with how hard the ending of this episode hit with Wonder Woman being exiled from Themyscira, since it's her own mother telling her that she can't come back because she has to uphold their laws. It's just a really enjoyable episode, and I can say already that this is the best version of Wonder Woman. To be fair, there isn't really much to compete with as movies and shows go. Goes above in Blackest Night Part 2, but below the Enemy Below Part 2. Warworld starts with an asteroid as Superman and John are doing some kind of tests on it. They find out that it's headed towards Earth, so they end up putting bombs on it to destroy it. When they do, it goes wrong. The asteroid blows up, but it's a much bigger explosion than what they were expecting, since there were some pockets of hydrogen stuck on the asteroid. Superman and John get knocked out when an alien ship comes in and takes them both. As that's going on, John gets shitty at Hawkgirl since she was meant to be looking over the whole operation. Hawkgirl explains that she did what she could, but they should just go to them instead of arguing one another, as we see the two aliens talking about how Superman's a Kryptonian. Both Superman and John get taken into an alien arena as we see that their leader is Mongul, and I recognize that voice. It's Eric Roberts, Falcone from The Dark Knight, or as the movie says it, Falcone.
Falcone.
So we see that in this arena they get taken to a simulation world known as Warworld, where the two contenders have a fight to the death as everyone in the arena watches. The one named Draga wins as he kills his opponent, but after that, Mongul rings the alien on ship as he seems shitty that none of the aliens that they've been bringing have lasted long against Draga. The captain guarantees that Superman will give him the fight of his life as Mongul hangs up, where we then go to Green Lantern and Hawkgirl as they look around the wreckage of their ship. They find out that a different ship was there as they follow the trail, where we then see Superman in captivity as Draga basically says that they're all shit. When he leaves, Superman breaks out of his chains and wanders around. He eventually finds John as they try to find their way out, but when they do, drones start shooting at them. Eventually they try to leave the stadium, but only Jean gets past the force field as Superman's stuck inside. Superman tells him to go try and find some help whilst he's stuck in there. Mongul's secretary tells him about how they're running out of food and that there's been a lot of blackouts, and as they're talking, the drones bring Superman in as he tries to escape. Mongul tells the drones to give Superman to Draga, as GL and Hawkgirl interrogate aliens on some planet. Hawkgirl gets into a fight, and eventually as the three aliens run away, John uses his ring to bring one of them back and get information out of them. They find out that Superman's been taken to Warworld, and as they go to find him, we see Draga as Superman's put out to fight against him in Warworld. Superman explains to Draga that they don't need a fight, but he keeps on fighting, and eventually Superman knocks Draga out as the audience boos him, and Mongul orders Superman to finish him as he says no. The episode ends with Mongul bringing out droids as they attack Superman. This is honestly one of the weaker episodes of this show. Definitely not bad at all since all the episodes in the show have been good so far, but this is definitely one of the weaker episodes at the moment. Mongul's a cool character, but besides that, there isn't much to say about the episode since it's basically just that Superman has to fight other aliens because of the situation he's put in. I just really hope that this episode picks up in the second part, but as this episode goes, it's at the bottom of the list. This picks up right where we left off as Superman's being attacked by the drones, and he manages to survive the first blast. And as he's about to be blasted the second time, Jean manages to rally up the crowd to let Superman survive. Mongul listens to the crowd and lets him live, and when Superman gets teleported back into the cell, all the other people are happy that he stood up against Mongul and tell him that they've come up with an escape plan. Superman explains that he can't as he wants to make sure that Jean's alright, but he decides to make them let Draga escape. As that's going on, GL and Hawkgirl are on a ship as they're being taken to Warworld. When they start arguing at each other, the person that they interrogated decides to knock him out with gas. When Draga gets dropped off at the garbage planet, he decides to be hardcore as fuck and burn an S onto his chest, just because he's ashamed that he got defeated. Back on Warworld, the crowd seems to be loving Superman, and as that's going on, GL and Hawkgirl get dropped off onto some random planet in the middle of nowhere. They wander around the planet for a bit until they find some lights as they run into some aliens that try to fight them since they think that they're trying to steal their stuff. They eventually run into Draga as he takes them to Warworld, and as they get there, Draga makes a run for it as they let him leave since they need to find Superman and John. Mongul then interrogates Superman as he explains that he has a weapon that can wipe out the planet, and he says that he will use it against any planet if he doesn't go along with his plans to fight him in Warworld and let him win. So eventually the two fight each other in Warworld as Draga sneaks his way into Warworld as Jean disguises himself as Mongul to destroy the weapon. He can't hold his disguise as he then has to fight all the people inside, and as that's going on, Draga gets into Warworld where he tries to get revenge on Superman. Superman explains that if he interrupts, his planet will be destroyed, and that he agreed to lose just to save his planet. Mongul and Superman fight again as GL and Hawkgirl come in to help Jean, as they manage to destroy the cannon just as it's firing. Mongul kicks the shit out of Superman, and as he's about to kill him, GL, Hawkgirl and Jean come in and save Superman, and as Superman's about to kick the shit out of Mongul, Drager manages to knock out Mongul, and Drager goes to give Superman Mongul's crown, as Superman says that he should wear it. Alright, the second part is definitely better. I think the big positive to this episode is seeing Mongul become an actual threat with a weapon that can destroy planets. Also, I do like how Drager comes back to get his revenge on Mongul, since he forced him to be on Warworld for so long. This episode goes above the first part, but below Secret Origins Part 1. Looking at the title of this episode, you'd think it's about Batman, but no, it isn't. Anywho, it starts with two archaeologists finding an ancient gorilla skull, and when they do, one of them sees a hidden city of gorillas, as three of them come out guns blazing, then disappear. We then go to the Flash in a diner flirting with two girls, and when that fails, a car crash is happening outside as the Flash saves the two girls from being squashed by a car. The driver says that the guy he crashed into is a madman, as the Flash has to hunt them down. He eventually catches up to them as they're mowing cars down with their truck as they start firing at him. The Flash ends up making their truck flip over on its side, as he manages to get the men out of the truck before it falls off the bridge. When the truck falls off, GL comes in and grabs it. They end up questioning the two men in the truck after seeing that they have radioactive isotopes in the back, as they seem to have no idea what happened. John ends up finding out who the two people were, as they both apparently worked at the research center where the isotopes are stolen from. They go to their place of work to find out why they would have done what they did, but only get told that they were under a lot of pressure to finish a project. They then leave, and when Flash is buying some hot dogs, they hear police sirens as a gorilla's on the loose. The Flash goes to stop the gorilla as we see a SWAT team trying to do the same thing. They have no luck, but as the gorilla hijacks a car, the Flash manages to stop the car, and as he tries to get the gorilla, he's surprised that it talks, but as that happens, he gets shot by a beam from the scientist at the lab. It shows him glimpses of how he got his powers, but also with some inflation for some reason, as it seems to be a nightmare that he isn't in control of. As he turns into a gorilla, he wakes up behind bars as he gets questioned by an officer, but they show him a tape of him stealing isotopes from a truck. As he's being questioned, GL bailed him out, and when they leave, John gets shitty and starts to question him about what he was thinking when he did what he did. The Flash explains what he last saw before getting hit by the beam, and the man makes a good point.
I'm supposed to believe this?
Hey, we both got a Martian's phone number on our speed dial. I think I deserve the benefit of the doubt here.
They then go to find some answers by investigating a crime scene, but they find handprints of a gorilla, and even find it in a tunnel. GL blasts the gorilla as it ends up being calm, but the two of them question the gorilla. They find out that his name is Solivar, and that he is the chief of security on Gorilla City. He explains what Gorilla City is, as it's a hidden city where they've lived there for thousands of years without any interference, until Grodd tried to take over the whole city with his mind control technology. They managed to stop his plans, but he ended up getting away, and when he did, he took the city's security plans with him. Since the gorillas managed to stop his plans, he's now trying to get revenge on Gorilla City, and that's the reason why Solivar's here. The Flash and GL ask where Grodd is, as Solivar explains that Grodd's been talking to a scientist named Dr. Sarah Corman. Yes, the same one that shot the Flash with the beam. And when he explains that, the Flash runs off to try and find Grodd. As the Flash runs off, Solivar gives GL a headband that will protect him from Grodd's mind control, as they've got to be fast to get to the Flash before he gets in more trouble. We see the Flash rock up at the lab, where Sarah tries to hold him at gunpoint, but he easily dodges her shot, and when he questions her, Grodd manages to knock him out. As he's knocked down, GL and Solivar come in to stop Grodd, but he ends up using his mind control on the Flash as he fights them, and when he does, Grodd and Sarah make a run for it. Eventually, as they're fighting, GL manages to knock out the Flash, as we then see Grodd and Sarah going to leave the lab. Hold on. That's literally the same lab that shows up in the Batman Beyond episode Heroes. Not even joking, it's the same, they just changed the colours slightly. But Solivar gets in, and as he shoots at them, they have a force field up, so Grodd and Sarah get away as they activate their device to destroy the city, so GL tries to stop the device but he can't. And when he fails, they get absorbed by it, where he expands over the whole city and wipes it out. Well, I didn't really expect the whole city to be gone, but it's a good episode. I personally just think that GL and the Flash work together so well, since they're such different personalities. As the rest of the episode goes, it's solid. The mind control idea where the Flash gets mind controlled into stealing is neat, but it doesn't go much further after the Flash gets bailed out by GL. I'm just hoping that Grodd becomes more interesting in the second episode, since he only shows up in the last few minutes of this one and doesn't have much time to develop as a big threat, obviously besides from the end where he wipes out the city. This episode goes above Secret Origins Part 1 but below Secret Origins Part 2. Second part starts with Hawkgirl, Wonder Woman and John discovering that Central City's disappeared off the map. They try to get a hold of them as we see GL waking up. They all get up, and as GL tries to contact the Watchtower, it doesn't work. We see that Central City has the same effect as Gorilla City, where nothing can get in and out of the city, and that no one can see it. Wonder Woman, Hawkgirl, and Jean go to look at Central City, where their ship detects something as they end up hitting the force field around the city. They land and try to get through the force field, but none of them seem to have any luck. But as that's going on, the Flash, GL, and Solovar see that Grodd's mind controlled the whole city. Whilst the other Justice League members are stuck outside of the city, Batman finds out that there's another city in Africa that has the same effect, but they all go to that location in Africa. Back in Central City, we see that the Flash ends up getting Gorilla Grodd to send the whole city after them, and as that's going on, the rest of the League arrive in Africa, where they end up getting knocked out and taken into the city. They end up being questioned as they are held captive, where we then see Grodd as Sarah as they manage to get into a missile control room at a military base in Central City. They plan on blowing up Gorilla City, and as they do, the Flash, GL, and Solovar catch up to them where GL goes after the missiles. But back in the prison, Batman manages to get free where he frees the rest of the members as they take out the gorillas. They break out, and as they do, more gorillas are after them. They try to get out of the force field but can't, and as they get caught, the force field goes off where they find out that Grodd shut it off. The Flash and Solovar gets a Grodd as they question him, where we see that GL's managing to shut off the missiles as he shuts 2 of the 4 off, but he gets hit by some of the debris from the second missile. Grodd ends up fighting the 2, and as he is, GL manages to wake up, and luckily for them, the other League members are able to stop the other 2 missiles before they hit Gorilla City. One of them manages to get down onto the ground as Wonder Woman's trying to stop it. But damn. As Wonder Woman seems to be squashed, Batman comes in running trying to save her. I actually really like this moment, but Wonder Woman seems to be alright as she throws the debris off her, and destroys the part that controls the missile as the gorillas cheer. Wonder Woman sees a bit of debris on Batman's hands, where he tries to hide it but he kisses him on the cheek. When that happens, we go back to the Flash as we find out that all the missiles have been deactivated, where he manages to knock out Grodd after he messes with his helmet. The episode ends with the gorillas showing the League what they're doing with Grodd, since what the Flash did to him seemed to make him completely brain dead whilst he's on display. And as they walk off, we see Grodd looking down at the Flash where he looks extra pissed. Okay, this part's definitely better. I feel like it's common with this show for the second part to be better, since they managed to flesh out a lot more things in the second episode, mainly the villains. It happened in Paradise Lost where Hades wasn't fleshed out much, and the same applies here. Grodd becomes more of a character and more of a threat in this episode since he's going to completely destroy Gorilla City, and he manages to mind control the whole city against the Flash and GL. Another thing I've got to mention is that I actually like how they're developing a bit of a romance between Batman and Wonder Woman. I know some people aren't a fan of it, but I actually think it works. They could have had a few more scenes together before this, but I buy this a lot more than the Barbara and Bruce relationship thing. Anywho, the episode goes above the first part, but below Secret Origins Part 2. Fury starts at Gotham Biotech as Copperhead knocks a guard out where a few villains come out to break into the facilities. They manage to get in as they steal some kind of flower as Batman comes out to fight them. Batman takes out Star, Sapphire, Grundy, and Security, but eventually gets his ass kicked by Aresia, and as she knocks Batman out, she leaves, but accidentally leaves a bit of her jewelry behind. We then see Wonder Woman at a women's fashion store, and honestly, this line's quite funny.
Why would anyone want to cover up her natural beauty?
Easy for you to say, Miss Cheekbones.
Eventually, she leaves the store, and as she helps a woman out in traffic, Batman talks to her as he found a bit of jewelry that Aresia left behind. Wonder Woman says that it's impossible for it to be an Amazonian, but as that's going on, we see Aresia persuading her group to go and help her with her next heist. We then go to Hawkgirl as she goes to Themyscira to find out what's really going on, since Batman knows that it had to be an Amazonian, but she ends up getting caught by some of the Amazonians. That night we see the heist go off as they steal a bunch of gems from the vault, where Aresia tells the rest of them to leave, and when she does, she steals some kind of ruby. As she steals the ruby, Superman comes in to stop her, but he gets his ass kicked as she throws some kind of smoke bomb at him, where he ends up looking very sick. Wonder Woman runs into her where they recognize one another, but she runs off as Wonder Woman has to go help Superman. After Wonder Woman takes Superman back to the Watchtower, we see Hawkgirl being questioned by the Queen, where Hawkgirl explains that she's a friend of her daughter's and that she was investigating a crime where an Amazonian was committing crimes. Hawkgirl shows her a piece of jewelry that Batman got as she rushes off with Hawkgirl to find Aresia, where she's meant to be, but she explains to Hawkgirl what's going on. They walk in to find no one as Hippolyta explains that Aresia was an Amazonian, but came to Themyscira after escaping a war-filled town after it was blown up. They ended up on the island after being on a refugee ship where pirates raided them and shot their ship down, as Aresia managed to survive the sinking of her ship and woke up on the island. They ended up accepting her as her own and trained her in their ways, but they end up finding many books that may have helped her with what she's doing at the moment. Back at the Watchtower as Superman's sick, GL and the Flash go to the Watchtower where both of them pass out since they've been affected by the sickness. We then see Aresia as she uses the ruby to create more of the gas, as she uses it against the crew where they all pass out from the gas. Then we go to Batman and Hawkgirl in the Batwing, as they hear about a lot of car crashes and trains crashing, and that a lot of people are getting sick from this sickness, as the episode ends with Batman realizing that all the people being affected by the gas seem to be male. I like this episode quite a lot. I really like how they build on Erasure as a character a lot in this episode, since you seem to really understand who they are and what they want in the first episode alone. It's good that we get more development on the villain in this two-parter, since you actually get to know who they are, and get to see more of them being a threat. I think that Erasure's backstory is actually quite interesting, where she got lucky to arrive on Themyscira, and ended up being raised as an Amazonian and gets taught their ways. I'm just interested to see where the second part goes, but this episode goes above in Blackest Night Part 1, but below in Blackest Night Part 2. So the second part starts right where we left off, as we see firefighters and ambulances trying to help people, as Erasure explains to Star Sapphire and Sakuri her plan, since the virus only affects males. She explains that man's world is filled with greed, deception and cruelty, and that women are going to take control. As Batman and Hawkgirl are out, Hawkgirl takes a kid to a hospital as Batman isn't feeling well. Wonder Woman then comes and tells Batman that it was one of her sisters that's doing this, as a bus comes their way. Eventually they manage to stop the bus where Batman passes out from the sickness, as he gets taken to the Watchtower, where Jean can't find a cure to the disease. Wonder Woman and Hawkgirl then have to go and find Erasure to get a cure to the disease. As that's going on, we see Erasure break into a military base, where she gets access to a jet, as Hippolyta comes to tell her to stop. When she does, Sakuri gets the jump on her and knocks her out. When Wonder Woman and Hawkgirl are going to find Erasure, they manage to save two women in a helicopter just before it blows up, and as they save the two people, Star Sapphire comes out to save the helicopter from falling onto the ground. She comes to warn the two about Erasure's plans, as she's trying to wipe out all the men on the planet, and she says that she's at the military base where the three of them go and fight Erasure at the base. When they do, Star Sapphire double crosses them, where now Wonder Woman and Hawkgirl have to fight all three of them. They manage to knock out Sakuri and Star Sapphire, and when they do, Erasure shows Wonder Woman that they have her mother hostage. Star Sapphire manages to knock the two out, where they go in the plane and take Wonder Woman's mother with them and fly away. Hawkgirl found an allergen in there, and as Hawkgirl takes it to the Watchtower, Jean passes out from the virus. We then see Wonder Woman, and when she catches up to the plane, Star Sapphire tries to take her out, but Hawkgirl comes in to help her. Eventually, the two get to the plane, as Erasure tries to say that men are their enemy, but Hippolyta comes out and says that they aren't. She explains that the ship's captain actually saved her since she slipped off the bit of wood that she was on, so the captain managed to take her to the shore of Themyscira just before he died. They ended up burying him on Themyscira, and was the only man to ever be buried there. Erasure gets shitty that she lied to her, and then throws her out of the plane as she activates the missiles, where Hawkgirl saves her. As the missiles are about to drop, Erasure and Wonder Woman fight, where Hawkgirl manages to stop the doors from opening, as the missiles are going to blow up in the ship. Wonder Woman, Hippolyta, and Hawkgirl get out as Erasure tries to control the ship, which blows up with her inside. They end up finding a cure for the disease off screen, as the episode ends with the cure being distributed to everyone, and Wonder Woman saying that if only Erasure learned to see the good qualities of man. Another two-parter where the second part's better. You're starting to notice a bit of a pattern here. It's still similar quality to the first part, but to see Erasure's plan almost complete, where most men are very sick and nearly dead, is actually good. It really shows how much she was able to achieve, since even all the men in Justice League were affected by it. I do like how they explain that the captain of the ship actually took Erasure to Themyscira, and gave her backstory a bit more of an explanation as to how she ended up on the island. It makes more sense than her randomly just drifting onto the island, but it also does show that it doesn't matter what gender a person is, they can still do good or bad things no matter what. This part goes just above the first part. Now, this is a two-parter I've been looking forward to watching again. It starts off with the League fighting against a giant robot that Lex Luthor is in control of, as they manage to destroy it. When they destroy it, the Flash tries to stop the robot from falling onto Hawkgirl, GL, and Jean, and when he does, they all disappear. We then see where they ended up, and as Jean tries to contact Batman and Superman telepathically, he gets visions of some kind of war. They then walk away from the robot, and when they do, it seems like they're in some town that's stuck back in the 1950s. They find out they're in a city called Seaboard City, but it's apparently still set in the present day. They then see Music Master as he robs a music center and makes a run for it. GL stops him for a moment, but he calls him the Green Guardsman. I guess we'll find out why. He eventually gets away as they get the violin that he stole, but a group of superheroes come out and start to fight them as they think that they stole the violin. Their group of superheroes seem to have similar powers to the Justice League, and as they're fighting, some kid watching gets put in danger where the Flash saves him. That eventually makes the group realize that they aren't evil, so they then go to their hideout where they explain who they are. They are the Justice Guild of America, which was originally meant to be the Justice Society of America early into development. Basically, Bruce Timm, Dan Reba, and a few other people wanted to use the JSA in this episode. When they approached WB about it, they basically just said no, so they decided to copy the JSA and just change it slightly so they won't get in trouble. They also explained that the kid that was in danger is actually a part of their group, kind of, since it's their #1 fan. The League's suspicious about what's going on at the moment, since GL points out that the Justice Guild are apparently comic book characters in this universe, and that he was a big fan of them as a kid. We then see Music Master in a secret lab with a few other villains, such as Sportsman, Dr. Blizzard, and Sir Swami, as they're known as the Injustice Guild. Makes sense. So the villains come up with a bet of who can pull off the best evil plan to destroy the Justice Guild and the new heroes. Back at the Justice Guild, Tom Turbine explains when the Flash did what he did, they probably ended up on a different Earth. Luckily for the League, Tom created a device that could send them back, but he doesn't know how to make it work. The Sergeant then drops off a letter to the Justice Guild, as it's a letter from the villains telling them to catch them if they can. So after giving the League's members a ring to make them honorary members of the Justice Guild, they go to stop the villains' plans as they're all committing crimes at the exact same time, so they all split up into groups to stop the villains. Sir Swami manages to disappear in a phone booth as GL and the Strake are fighting him. The Music Man gets away in an old plane as Hulk Girl and Green Guardsman are trying to stop him. The Flash and Black Siren get frozen from Dr. Blizzard after saving a bus full of nuns, and as Catman and Jean are chasing after Sportsman, Jean gets visions of an explosion going off, so Catman comes back for him. As Hulk Girl lost Music Man, the episode ends with her finding graves on the field that she landed on, as she finds out that the Justice Guild are all dead. Holy shit, that ending's great. The episode is really good overall since it's basically just a big homage to the Silver Age of comic books, where villains were very lighthearted and silly. Using a copy of the Justice Society is a great way of doing that, and you can tell that they were really good in that direction just by the designs of the guild alone. They all have that Silver Age style to them mixed with a bit of Bruce Timm's style, and I think it works really well. I also like how the ending of this episode was hinted towards since Jean kept getting visions of an explosion throughout the episode, and it's also just an excellent twist that the guild's been dead all along. It just makes me interested to see where the second part goes, and as this episode goes, I love it. Alright, so the second part starts with Hawk Girl telling GL and Jean what she saw, as GL doesn't believe it since he idolizes them so much. We then go to the Injustice Guild as they show off what they got with their plans, as Dr. Blizzard won since he got Black Siren and the Flash. The guild ends up getting a call from the Sergeant as he tells them that he found out from the Injustice Guild that they have the Flash and Black Siren, so they all have to go and stop them. As we do, we see Hawk Girl approach GL as he sees their graves. They question who the guild actually are, and as they're questioning, they decide to try and get answers. They do that by questioning an ice cream truck driver, and as John tries to get answers out of him, he panics and says that they might hear them when he drives off. We then go to the guild as they see a giant blimp with the villains having the two tied up on the outside of the blimp. They go to stop them but don't have much luck, but Catman manages to get onto the blimp. As they're fighting, John and Hawk Girl go to the library for some answers, but find nothing in any of the books. Literally nothing in any of the books since they're all blank pages. Eventually they get into the basement where they see a brick wall behind the door. They bust down the wall and break through to see a destroyed train station. They notice that the trains have gunshots and other things as they find a newspaper down there from 40 years ago, which is also dated to the same day as their last comic in this universe. The news says that war is near, but we go out to Catman as he keeps on fighting them as Tom Turbine saves the Flash and Black Siren. Eventually the villains try to bail, but the guild catches up to them as the villains get put into police custody. Back at their hideout, GL and Hawk Girl confronts the guild and say that they aren't the guild. John shows them a newspaper that says JGA killed in battle, but as they're talking about it, the Sergeant rings about a giant robot destroying the city. As the guild are going to leave, John stops them and explains that the whole town is weird, such as the ice cream trucks that don't stop and library books with blank pages. They explain that this world's an illusion of their world 40 years ago, since they died right at the time that the comics stopped in their world. The guild wonders who's creating this illusion, but Jean tells them to ask Ray, the kid that's been with them the whole time. Jean goes up to him and he ends up exposing his true form, where Ray cracks the shits that he ruined everything. He starts to fight back as he uses the robot to distract the guild, but the League focuses their attention on Ray since he's the actual threat. They try to stop him but have no luck, and as GL's about to be killed, the guild go in to save them where they agree that they can save Earth again. The guild starts to fight him and eventually they manage to make him stop the visions by knocking him out as John sees the guild disappear. But as the League looks around and sees that their city is completely destroyed, they see the city people come up to them as the ice cream driver thanks them for saving them. They then decide to try and find the device in the basement of the guild, which is luckily still there since half of the place is destroyed, as John manages to use his ring to power the device. They manage to go through it as the episode ends with Hawk Girl talking to John, as she confronts him and explains that they gave their lives for them, and that's real enough for her. Also, I like how this two-part is dedicated to Gardner F. Fox, since he created the Justice League and the Justice Society. This episode's even better. The best thing about this episode is seeing how John reacts to all this information, since he idolizes the Justice Guild and starts to accept that in this world that they're real and alive. But when the truth comes down on him, he doesn't accept it at first until he sees it before his own eyes, and that shit hits hard. I do like the mystery where they have to find out who's been creating the illusions of this world, but I do feel like it was solved extremely quickly since Ray was very suspicious from the word go. I really like how the guild ends up giving their lives for the League, since they couldn't have just lived in this illusion, but they gave their lives to stop it and save the League. Also, yeah, this is the reason why WB didn't want them to use the JSA, because they're dead in the end. This episode's definitely at the top because I love this episode. I'm glad that they're finally doing episodes that are even better than just being a good episode. Like, this episode is honestly fantastic. Is the title of this episode a play on Metallica's 1988 album And Justice for All? Or perhaps the 1979 Al Pacino movie? Probably neither, but it's a bit of a coinky-dink. The episode starts with Lex nearly killing Superman with a piece of kryptonite. As he's about to end him, Superman asks about the weapons he gave to the terrorists, as Lex says that he bribed a few people to get them through. When he tells Superman that, he reveals himself to be Jean, as him, Batman, and GL stop Lex and take the kryptonite from him. As they're about to leave, Lex tries to kill them with a ship as he gets on and tries to make his escape. When he does, Superman comes in to stop Lex. Superman gets shot down, but Lex starts to be in severe pain, but luckily for him, Superman saves the ship just before it's about to crash, where Superman sees Lex nearly die. We then go to a hospital as Lex tries to cover his ass since what he said to Jean was very incriminating, but Superman tells him not to worry about that, as he tells him to listen to the doctor. The doctor then tells Lex that he has a rare blood disease after he suffered a seizure on the ship, as the piece of kryptonite that he held onto for years gave him a rare disease. It only happens to people that hold onto it or are near it for a very long time, as Lex tries to get the doctor to find a cure for him, but the doctor tells him that his case is terminal. Lex is shitty at Superman since he thinks that it's his fault that he got the disease. We then go to Lex in prison where he manages to hack into an inmate's TV named Humanite, where he negotiates a deal to make him help Lex. That night, Humanite manages to knock out 2 guards at an electric floor, where he uses them to get Luthor out of his cell. They end up escaping as guards try to shoot them, and as they get into the city, they set a building on fire with a bomb to keep the authorities busy so they can get to LexCorp. Batman ends up coming in to save the people in the building, as he manages to save a little girl that was stuck inside with Hawkgirl's help. Superman and the Flash come in as they couldn't find Lex and Humanite, but we then see a secret hideout that the two have in an abandoned store. We see it as Cheetah goes in and eventually starts to fight Copperhead, but they realise that the both of them are here for the job, but we also then see Solomon Grundy as they all fight each other. I don't know why it took me so long to realise that Mark Hamill voices Solomon Grundy. I can hear it now since it's basically his Skip's voice from regular show.
No one hurts Grundy.
Rigby, me, you, rematch.
But it's still weird how long it took me to realise that. Eventually the Shade and Star Sapphire come in to introduce themselves, as both Lex and Humanite come out. Lex explains that he needs their help, and that they'll get paid well if they manage to destroy Superman and the Justice League. Back in the Watchtower, Hawkgirl really burns the Flash.
Fastest man alive.
Which might explain why you can't get a date.
They then see that Humanite has a hostage at the Metropolis Federal Building, as we see the League come in to stop Humanite. As they do, the other villains come out and fight the League, as they give them a good fight. The one thing I keep noticing throughout this season is that Superman keeps getting his shit kicked in, even though he's the strongest member. I will get more into that at the end of the season, because it becomes more evident with some certain fights that happen, especially when he's fighting Grundy. So after fighting for a while, Batman manages to get infected by Copperhead's bite, as the Shade manages to give them all a chance to escape. When they do, the League sees that Batman's not feeling well, as they end up curing him of the venom in his system at the Watchtower. As he's cured, Batman wants to go and help them, and after researching something on the computer, as Jean tells him that he needs to go and rest, he tells him that he's going to take the shuttle. As he does, I absolutely love this moment.
I'm taking the shuttle, unless you want to try and stop me.
No.
We then see Lex being shitty at the villains since they failed to destroy the League. And as Grundy was going to kill Lex, the Joker comes in as Lex tells him to leave. Fuck yeah, the Joker is back, baby! Also yeah, in between the new Batman Adventures and this, the Joker redesign did show up in Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, and if you ask me, it's probably the best Joker design besides from the BTAS design. You know what though? Nothing beats Mark Hamill's performance as Cockknocker.
You and your sidekick are finally in the grasp of Cockknocker.
Eventually the Joker manages to persuade Lex to let him help, as he finds a tracker of Batman's on Lex. Not long after Batman arrives, he sees the villains playing poker where the Joker manages to knock him out. The episode then ends with the Joker laughing since he knocked out Batman. Damn, I'm so glad that we get yet another really good episode. I'm actually surprised at how much I like the plot of this episode, where Lex gets a rare blood type disease from the kryptonite, then he wants to get revenge on Superman by hiring villains to kill him in the Justice League. It's quite simple, but it really works, and if you ask me, the ending of this episode is the best, where we get to see the Joker come into this show and knock out Batman for Lex. It goes above Legends Part 1, but below Legends Part 2. Straight into the second part, where it continues where we left off, as Batman's tied up where the Joker wakes Batman up. The Joker then tells Lex that he shouldn't wait to kill Batman, and just do it now, but he says that he's keeping him alive. Lex then tries to interrogate Batman for any passwords or anything that might help them, but he obviously doesn't give any answers. As Batman's in captivity, he gets into Grundy's head by saying that he should be getting paid more than Humanite, but as that's going on, Lex tries to get into Batman's utility belt but fails. When he fails, he sees Grundy and Humanite fighting, as he splits them up and then gets Cheetah to guard him instead. Lex and the other villains walk away as we then see Superman and the Flash interrogating Copperhead, as he was the only villain that got left behind. They can't get any answers out of him, as they wonder how Batman does it, but speaking about Batman, he manages to use his 1000 level Riz to Riz up Cheetah. Batman's got way too much Riz, but it makes sense. Also, you can't tell me that Bruce Timm doesn't have some weird kinks. Like, damn, look at how Cheetah's drawn. Like, he could have calmed down a little bit, but you like what you like, I guess. As Cheetah's down there with Batman, the Joker mentions that it's been too long, as Lex mentions that he won't let the Joker be alone with him since he might kill Batman, and instead he decides to send Humanite to watch Batman. When he does, Lex manages to get into the utility belt, as they find a key that will allow them access into the Watchtower. Shade, Star Sapphire, and Grundy get inside, as Jean sees them entering the building where he puts it into lockdown, and when he does, he gets his ass handed to him. The other League members are still at the prison, as they mention that something's probably wrong at the Watchtower, so they decide to go back and help Jean. We then go back to Batman, as the Joker mentions that when the League gets back to the Watchtower, the whole thing's gonna blow up, as he shows Batman the Watchtower on TV. The Joker also mentions that he gets Batman after the Watchtower blows up. Speaking about the Watchtower, we go back there as the League arrive, where we see Jean on the floor. He's out cold as we see the briefcase that the villains walked in with is still at the Watchtower with a flashing red light on it. Whilst they're up at the tower, we see Lex watching the Watchtower on TV, as we see Cheetah having second thoughts. The League then try to contact Batman, but they can't get through to him. But after they do, their phone rings. Wonder Woman answers to hear someone say that a bomb's in the Watchtower, as the League then split up to find it. Green Lantern sees it and gets it, as the Flash manages to throw it out of the Watchtower, as Lex thinks that the Watchtower is blown up, but he sees that it didn't actually blow up when the explosion clears. He gets really shitty as the villains then decide to leave, but when they're about to leave, Lex says that they will triple their pay, which makes them stay. The League gathers the information that the villains managed to get into the Watchtower with Batman's access key, as we then see Grundy make the Joker leave, as Batman thanks Grundy for coming in. When he does, he gets Grundy to get him a drink of water, where he manages to destroy the device above him that prevented Jean from detecting him. Batman then talks to Jean telepathically, as he now knows where he is, and as that's going on, Humanite's doing an experiment on Lex that should stabilize his condition. Grundy warns Lex about how Batman destroyed the device, as he says that the League's on their way, where Lex figures out that one of them is a traitor. He then sees on the cameras that Cheetah was the one that told the League about the bomb, as the Joker manages to knock her out. Lex then says to Grundy that the kitty's all his, as she gets dragged away to seemingly be killed. The League then arrive at the hideout, where Jean gets knocked out by Humanite, where the rest of the League follow and start to fight the villains. They manage to knock out Shade, Grundy, and Sapphire, as Lex comes out with a super suit and kicks the shit out of Superman. When he does, Humanite comes out and knocks Lex out, where he surrenders. Joker's still around, and as he's gonna go kill Batman, he ends up getting free of his restraints, as he reveals that he could have escaped at any time. Batman then knocks the Joker, where he spits out a classic Daffy Duck line.
You're despicable.
But whoops, there's an animation error here where Cheetah's in the back of the police van, since she was actually meant to be dead. Also, why is Copperhead there? He was already in custody. But I love this moment where Humanite asks if Batman will keep his bargain.
You'll keep our bargain?
Yes. Double what Luthor was paying.
The episode then ends with Lex hating Humanite's music he's playing, and says that he'll get revenge on him. This episode is even better. Obviously, all the other compliments of the first episode apply here, but seeing more of the Joker interacting with all the other villains is great. There's no denying that the Joker's the best villain out of them all, with Lex being a close second. You all know that I love the world's finest three-parter where Lex and the Joker team up to take down Batman and Superman, so of course I'd love this two-parter. Seeing the villains almost take down the whole League is really a big surprise, since they all would have died if Cheetah didn't tell the League about the bomb on board of the Watchtower. I really wonder if Cheetah will come back in this show since she was meant to be dead, but accidentally is in the back of the truck near the end of this episode. As this episode goes though, it's above the first part but below Legends Part 2. A Night of Shadows starts with a medieval battle where men are trying to get into a castle. You see that this kid named Mordred is apparently going to have his own kingdom as his mother named Morgane Le Fay is commanding the army. They eventually break into the castle as one man named Jason Blood disguises himself as a guard to let the men into the castle. I know where this is going. He seems to be in love with Morgane, and when he goes to kiss her, she poisons him and leaves him for dead. As he's dying, Merlin comes out and tells him that Camelot will fall, and for that he's going to curse Jason with a demon until he redeems his monstrous deed, since he betrayed his men when we see him turn into Etrigan. We then go to a crime scene where Batman drops in to get some clues as to what happened. Finds out that someone ripped out a page about the Philosopher's Stone, as Jason drops in and talks to Batman. Jason explains the book as Morgane's back to track down the Philosopher's Stone and give her son a new empire since Merlin hid the stone. We then go to a castle where we see Mordred attacking knight statues as a hotel worker is trying to get him to stop. As he's trying to make him stop, Morgane comes out and basically sucks the soul out of the hotel worker, like what we saw with the crime scene before. The two of them then go into a room where they find nothing at first, but they sense that Jason Blood's after them as Morgane's amulet lights up. We then see Batman and Jason go into where they were, as Jason knows that she's been here. When he figures that out, the door's shut and a bunch of swords go flying their way. They manage to stay alive by fighting off the swords and the knights that come to life, as Jason transforms into Etrigan. After getting out, Batman gets Wonder Woman, Jean and the Flash to come and help them, where Etrigan explains what Morgane's been doing. Jean tries to locate her telepathically as she's hiding out in London, where she knows that someone's trying to find her as she manages to attack Jean. When she does, Jean has visions that he's back on Mars where everything's back to the way it used to be, even with his partner still being alive. Jean's hesitant about all this being real, but as he does, his partner tells him to come with him as he sees his two kids and starts to accept that he's back home. Etrigan then comes into his vision to take him out of it, since he fell victim to it as he starts to see that it's all a vision and wakes up. After brushing off what happened, he tells the League that he couldn't locate her, but senses that she doesn't have the stone yet, but also heard the two words archaeologists and castle. So as the League are on their way to find Morgane, we see her and Mordred breaking into a hall of records as they find the right castle on a computer. They see the two owners of the castle on the computer as well, but they have to try and locate the owners to see if they have the stone. As they're trying to find one of the owners named Henry Moss, Etrigan manages to get to him first, as he seems to have gone into shock, as Jean finds out that he doesn't have the stone. So with the first owner not knowing anything, we see Wonder Woman and the Flash as they try to find the other owner named Hickman, where he seems to be literally a carbon copy of Hugh Hefner, and lets them in since he likes how Wonder Woman looks. Batman and Etrigan wait at Moss's place, where Morgane rocks up as they're waiting, and knocks Jean out whilst he's disguised as Moss. She manages to make Jean see his partner again, as the two of them leave where Etrigan starts to fight Jean since he thinks that he let her get away. The episode then ends as Batman stops Etrigan, and then passes out as Etrigan says that he knows that it's all Jean's fault. It's a solid episode. I personally just don't find the villains that interesting at all, but the best part about it is seeing Jason Blood and Etrigan back, since they're good in the new Batman Adventures. Besides that, it's just a good episode overall. It just seems like we've gone back to the quality before the last 4 episodes, which is a little disappointing. Goes above Secret Origins Part 3, but below Paradise Lost Part 1. The second part starts at the Watchtower as Batman wakes up. Jean apologizes for hesitating in the fight, where he admits that he knew it was all a vision, but it felt so real and he had such an urge to believe it. After that, we go to the ball that Hickman's hosting, as the Flash of course gets distracted by 2 girls at a spa, as Wonder Woman flirts with Hickman to try and find out if he has the stone. 2 of them go into his bedroom as he has the stone at the end of his bed, where he uses it for money and women, where Morgane and her son attack. Wonder Woman takes the stone as Morgane turns Hickman into a giant worm, as now the Flash and Wonder Woman have to stop the worm. Morgane almost gets the stone as Etrigan comes out to fight her and makes Wonder Woman run with the stone. Etrigan almost dies as the Flash saves him, where Morgane gets extra shitty and makes the mansion go on fire. We see the Flash with Etrigan back at the Watchtower as they lock the stone up in some secret compartment of the Watchtower. As that's going on, we see Jean have another vision where he's back on Mars, where he's told to come home, where Jean tries to fight the visions and manages to do so. He seems to be getting weaker and weaker as Morgane's looking at him through a bowl, where she knows that she can get him to break. We then go back to the Watchtower as the army that we saw at the start of the 2-parter attack. The League fight them where Jean starts to have visions again. Etrigan, with the help from the Flash, manages to freeze the army, and even makes them all shatter as they try to find Jean. Etrigan tells them that he's already gone and has taken the stone, where the League try to contact him but can't get through to him. Batman reassures Etrigan that he'll do whatever it takes to get the stone back, and that's cold as fuck. Batman basically just says that he will kill Jean if he can't get the stone off him without killing him. Really shows how big of a threat Morgaine really is. Speaking about her, she then manages to create a castle in the middle of London with her powers, and she tells her son that it's his throne. Jean ends up arriving as the League manages to stop him from handing her the stone, where they fight. Whilst the League's busy with Morgaine and her son, Etrigan gets his ass kicked by Jean as he tries to take the stone from him. Eventually both Wonder Woman and Batman get knocked out as Jean manages to knock Etrigan and make him turn back into Jason. As he knocks him out, he goes to give Morgaine the stone, but when he does, he crushes it in his hand and realizes that the price is too high for him to get his family back. The two of them then disappear as they lost the fight, but apparently not the war, where the League wakes up to see the castle disappear. Jean apologizes to the League for risking the lives of his new family just to get back his old family, and then resigns from the League. The episode ends as Jason admits that the demon was wrong about him, and that he redeemed himself today, where he wishes that he had Jean's strength, since he's now cursed for eternity for not having the strength back then. This part's much better. Seeing Jean struggle with wanting his old family back, even though he knows it isn't real, is really the best stuff about this two-parter. It definitely gets more of a highlight in this part, which honestly makes this part better than the first. It really fleshes out Jean as a character more, and it's definitely great at doing that. But besides that, the episode's pretty similar to the first part. Goes above in Blackest Night Part 1, but below Fury Part 1. Metamorphosis starts with a few men working at a drilling site, as they're drilling for oil where the drill ends up blowing up as the men run away just before the whole thing blows up. We see that some men are watching this footage at a meeting, as this man named Simon Stagg has an idea to bring in something called Metamorpho, which is a chemically altered worker that can survive in any conditions. The other men straight up say no, since it seems to be a half-baked idea, and as they leave, Stagg says that he'll give them proof that an idea like this will work. We then follow a goon of Stagg's named Java, as he takes a suitcase with him onto a train as one of the workers takes it from him. When he does, the suitcase falls over where one of the vials of chemicals spills on the floor. It ends up going through the floor and causes the hydraulic system to stop working, as they keep speeding up and can't stop the train. The train keeps going until GL comes in to stop it, and does so after it crashes into the train station. As GL's talking to one of the men at the site, a guy that was on the train comes up as he seems to know John. The guy's name is Rex Mason, as they seem to have served the Marine Corps together, as Rex says that they should catch up sometime. That night, John visits him at his penthouse, as he mentions that Stagg pays well, and we see that Rex's fiancée is Simon's daughter named Sapphire. Back at the crime scene, we see Batman snooping around as he finds traces of chemicals that cause the train to fail. Batman ends up talking to John about what he found, as he ends up asking Rex about it, where Rex seems to be shitty at John for asking him about it. John ends up leaving as we see Stagg being shitty at Java as Rex goes in to see him. Rex connected the dots that Java was the one that put the chemicals on the train and caused the accident, where Stagg tells him to stay out of it, and if he doesn't, he'll unmake him since he apparently made him. That night, we see Java drive Stagg to a building as he goes to give flowers to his daughter, as Rex tells Stagg that he accepted a job offer in Chicago and that his daughter's going with him. Stagg is shocked but says that he'll let his daughter go since he wants her to be happy, but seems shitty at Rex as he leaves. Back in the car, he decides that Rex will be his volunteer for his experiment. We then go to Rex as he's cleaning his office out where he sees a security breach, and as he tries to contact the guards, they seem to be knocked out. Rex walks into a room as he then manages to get trapped in a giant tube where he gets the experiment done to him. He wakes up the next morning not knowing what happened to him as Sapphire walks in where she passes out at the side of him. So he looks at himself in the mirror and panics. He knocks out Java then makes a run for it as John shows up trying to see if they need any help. And as Stagg and Sapphire are at the crime scene, she asks John for his help where he says that he will help. We then go back to Stagg Laboratories as Rex is interrogating Stagg, as he knows that it wasn't an accident what happened to him, but Stagg ends up diverting his attention to photos of John with Sapphire, as it looks like Sapphire was cheating on Rex with him. The League then come and help John with finding Rex, but have to stop a robbery first and manage to do so. John nearly got killed, but Hawkgirl saved him and knows that something's up, as John explains that he could have been like him if he took a different path, but as he's talking about that, Rex contacts him saying that they need to talk. He goes straight to him where they start to fight since he's pissed that John apparently tried to get with Sapphire. The episode ends with Rex knocking John out and just standing over him where he's ready to kill him. This episode is pretty good actually. The only real negative I would have to say about this episode is that Stag and Java are the very stereotypical villain and sidekick kind of shtick. Stag's just the smart one and Java's just the muscle, and there isn't really much else to their characters besides from Stag being shitty at Rex. The best stuff in this episode is the personal conflicts that John has to face in this episode. There's also hints of the Two-Face two-parter with how Rex gets transformed into Metamorpho. I personally wish that they dived into more of how his transformation's affecting him, since we only got about 2 scenes where we really get to see how it's affecting him. Still a good episode, so it goes above Paradise Lost Part 2, but below The Enemy Below Part 2. The second part picks up right where we left off, as John wakes up just as he's about to be killed, where Superman gets in Rex's way, as a few of the League's members also come in to fight Rex. Eventually, Rex falls underground as he manages to get away in the water, where he ends up at Sapphire's place where he cracks the shits about her apparently cheating on him. She manages to get through him that the photos were a lie, as he realizes that Stag set him up, as we see the men in the press conference now want Metamorpho. As Stag gets off the phone with him, Rex tries to interrogate him, but as Rex tries to hit Stag, Java manages to freeze him at sub-zero temperatures. John ends up talking to Sapphire as she explains what happened when she saw Rex, as she admits that Rex always looked up to him. John then leaves as we see Rex thawing out in the back of the truck, where he attacks the 2 goons driving it and then manages to knock him out. We go back to Stag Labs as they create more of the mutagen that transformed Rex, as he comes in to get Stag. He tells him that he won't let him do this to anyone else, as he destroys the device that he was using, where it shocks Stag where he seems to be dead, until we see that Stag actually transformed into a giant chemical monster. GL and Batman get to Stag Labs, where Rex explains what's happening at the moment and apologizes for what happened earlier, as we then see the giant chemical monster causing havoc in the city. Superman and Hawkgirl come in to stop it, as Batman confirms that Hawkgirl found the giant chemical monster, where Rex explains what he knows about the monster. Rex says that he will help, as John seems hesitant at first, but Batman says that they will need all the help they can get, as we see Hawkgirl and Superman struggling against the monster. They get their asses kicked as John, GL and Rex come in to help, as they figure out that the Stag monster's after Sapphire, where we see her get grabbed by the monster. The League catches up and starts to fight it, as they seem to have no luck stopping it. Batman then rings GL to explain that they could destroy it with some kind of acid, but it will take days to be able to take it down, as Rex says that he could transform into it and destroy Stag. Rex knocks John out with a gas and gets the formula of Batman to try and transform into the concoction that could kill them both. He ends up transforming himself into it, where he jumps into the monster and gives his own life to kill the Stag monster. As the monster's dying, we see Stag wake up in his body, where he screams and then seems to die as the monster dies. The episode ends with Sapphire crying as Rex comes back to life and Sapphire kisses Rex. I like this episode quite a lot, but it's a bit weaker than the first part. It's still good overall, but honestly, did we really need a giant Stag monster for the heroes to fight? I personally think it would have been better where Rex ended up breaking mentally, and the League had to stop him as he's about to kill Stag. Would have been more interesting, but at least the monster fight makes sense where Rex has to potentially risk his own life just to save Sapphire, where he ends up surviving anyways. Goes above in Blackest Night Part 2, but below Paradise Lost Part 2. Ooh, so this season finishes off with a 3-parter. Well, let's see how this goes. The Savage Time starts with GL talking to the League back at the Watchtower after they had a battle on a different planet. As they're talking, they see a giant echo or soundwave kind of thing as the Watchtower disappears. They then decide to land to find the source of the soundwave thing that happened, as they see that they're on a completely different version of Earth. But the League sees that Metropolis is this styled version of Metropolis, as they see that some man's face is everywhere as 2 officers come in trying to arrest them for not having their identity papers. They end up fighting them as well as a few other officers, where they end up hearing Batman calling out to them as they all get into the sewers and escape in a rocket-fueled train. As they're escaping, we see that Batman looks different, and as they escape into the Batcave, we see a bunch of men whip out guns onto them as Batman starts to question the Flash. Superman makes a good point where he says that if he wanted to hurt them, they would have, as Batman then talks to the League and explains that his parents got murdered by stormtroopers from the regime because his parents spoke up against it. What a clever way to change Batman's origin story for this universe. But he explains that he is the leader of this resistance, where it's full of orphans and outsiders, as they're fighting against the regime. Batman then explains that the regime has been in power since World War II, as they ended up winning the war when the Allies invaded Europe on D-Day. The League gathered that the Soundwave is what sent them here, and that the same thing happened on this world at a building of the leader named Vandal Savage's research center. The League had no idea who he is, as Batman explains that he's the leader of the regime, as the League sneaked their way into the research center. When they do, they see an experiment that they have going on where they're trying to find a way to time travel, so the League attacks where the guards come out and try to stop them. The League stops them as they realize that the thing that they've been experimenting on is like a black hole where they get sent back into the past to change the outcome of the war. The League then decides that they need to go through the hole to fix everything, as Batman says that he will stay, and this moment's great.
You understand that if we do change the past, you, this version of you, will never have existed.
Nothing would make me happier.
They all go into the hole where they end up landing in a destroyed building in the middle of a war zone, as they see some kind of giant tank come out and destroy all the other tanks, since this giant tank obviously isn't from this time period. As the League try to take the tank down, they have no luck as it seems to be indestructible, but Jean sneaks on to destroy the motor that makes it run, as they end up destroying the guns and tipping it over. The League sees more of the tanks coming out as Jean says that he needs to go to Berlin, as his answers might be there, as Wonder Woman says that he can't go alone, where she goes with him. In Berlin, we see Vandal Savage as he receives a letter that tells him that heroes in capes are taking out tanks, as one of the men questions him if they have the weapons to stop them. Vandal guarantees that he has weapons that can deal with them, as he whips out a gauntlet and electrocutes the guy questioning him. Eventually their hideout gets attacked, as we then see a man hijack a regime plane, as he ends up being under attack by other planes. Wonder Woman and John end up saving him as he crashes his plane into another one, since he got knocked out by a bit of debris. He wakes up to see Wonder Woman questioning him, as he explains that he has something that they want, and that thing is knowing that they're going to invade England, and he knows exactly when and how they're going to do it. After telling Wonder Woman that, he ends up leaving as he introduces himself as Steve Trevor. Jean ends up stopping him as he questions Steve about the weapons, as he mentions that Vandal has weapons in a lab, but he couldn't get in, as Jean decides to go and try to get in. We see him as he gets there and sneaks his way in, and he sees a laptop, which is kind of strange. But what's even stranger is that he sees Adolf Hitler as he's cryogenically frozen, where he gets knocked out by Vandal. As the regime is wiping out some towns, the Flash, GL, Superman and Hawkgirl are trying to help the men that are fighting against the regime. Green Lantern runs out of charge as he tells Hawkgirl to take the men to safety, as 3 tanks are after him, and that's how the episode ends. God damn, this episode's really fucking good. It's just a really interesting idea for an episode to have the League having to go back in time to stop the regime from taking over the world. I also really like how we see the regime actually succeed in taking over the world at first, as Metropolis is completely transformed to their own image, as the League has to go back in time and fix everything. I just hope that Vandal becomes an interesting character since you don't really see him at all, but that's also the question I have with this episode. Did some kind of censor not allow the show to have Adolf as the main villain of this 3-parter? Because personally, I don't see much of a point in changing who runs the regime, besides from it being a censorship kind of thing, but it was a surprise to see him frozen. Hopefully they can justify having the regime leader change to Vandal Savage by making him an interesting character and by making him more of an actual threat to the League and giving him more of a personality. This episode goes above Injustice for All Part 2, but below Legends Part 2. The second part starts off at the shores of some country, as the US soldiers are trying to leave the country with the League helping them get onto the boats and escape. Hawkgirl tells the Flash that she had to leave GL behind, as he had no charge in his ring and she had to save some men, so the Flash decides to go back for him. As he does, we see John just barely managing to survive, as he's being shot at by a tank, where the tank ends up getting ordered to go somewhere else. The Flash can't find him as he's stuck in mud, so we go back to Superman and Hawkgirl as they're fighting off a bunch of fighter planes. Eventually other planes come out and help the League, as they have Hawk logos on the side of their planes, where they see Hawkgirl and Superman as allies as they help them take out the regime planes. They manage to take out their planes as a few of them get away, where we then go to Wonder Woman as she takes Steve into some house which is half destroyed. They both go inside as it's meant to be a rendezvous point, as they have to wait for the other people to arrive. As they do, we see Superman, Hawkgirl and the Flash, as the Flash couldn't find GL, where Hawkgirl shows why she had to leave GL there, since there would have been many more casualties if she saved him. The planes then land as they introduce themselves as the Blackhawks, as they're all from different countries and are fighting to stop the regime from taking over their countries. We then go to John as he sneaks his way around, until he runs into a few US soldiers where one of them recognizes him as Green Lantern, and that he was helping them to fight. John tells him that his ring is out of juice, as he says that he will do what he can do, as one of the soldiers tries to pick a fight with him since he thinks that he isn't a real soldier. GL kicks his ass since he used to be in the Marine Corps, as the soldiers let him help. As he's gonna help them, we see Vandal as he thinks that Jean is something called an Ubermensch, which is a being meant to rule the world. Vandal explains that his goal is for peace with him ruling the world, where he explains that the laptop he has is the most powerful weapon in the world since he has it in the 1940s. He explains that he isn't from the future but managed to record a DVD for the soldiers in the 2000s, where he looks basically the same with plans on how to take over the world in the 1940s. Vandal sent himself a laptop with the DVD since he found out a way to travel back in time, as his full plan is on the DVD, such as pushing Hitler aside, when the Allies will attack, etc. Vandal tries to get answers out of him, but he doesn't, as he gets one of his men to try and get answers out of him by torturing him. We go back to Wonder Woman and Steve as they start to bond, but as they are, soldiers start to shoot at them. Steve says that he will distract him as he gives Wonder Woman the device that they're after, as he then kisses her. Hey yo, what the fuck? Man just forces himself onto her. Anywho, Steve distracts the man as Wonder Woman manages to take them all out and interrogates one of them. We then go back to Jean as the man that was torturing him leaves to get more tools, but the guards hear him in the basement. They then go in to see that the guy that was torturing Jean is in the restraints, so we then see Jean running around the facility in the disguise as he manages to sneak past some men. As that's going on, Superman, the Flash, and Hawkgirl follow the Blackhawks to their base on an island as they find out that the regime is building something at a factory as they have to take down the security to destroy the lab. We then go to GL with some of the US soldiers as they're shooting some of the regime's men. One of them ends up getting shot as they're about to throw a grenade, but GL manages to shoot that person that was shooting them. They end up beating the soldiers as we then see that Jean destroyed the laptop, as Vandal wants to go through with their plans as soon as possible, but one of the communicator devices is gone. Wonder Woman and Steve then have a plan to sneak into the regime base by breaking through one of the walls, where they end up breaking out one of the men that Steve needs, named Dover, where they see giant tanks after them as it seemed to be a trap. This part's still really good, but it's a bit weaker than the first part. We still get some really good things in this episode, such as seeing how being in a giant war affects the Justice League, and more development on Vandal and his plan, but besides that, it just isn't as interesting. This episode's mainly just furthering the plot to get to the final part where we get the big fight, and it works at doing that. At this point we know more about Vandal and his plan, so it works at what it's trying to do, but it isn't amazing. It goes above the Enemy Below Part 1, but below Legends Part 1. Last episode of the season, god damn. So we start this last part right where we left off, as the tanks are closing in on Wonder Woman and Steve, as they know that they have the communicator. The tanks start to shoot at them as they manage to get squashed by one of the tanks, but the soldiers find the front cover of the communicator as they think that it has been destroyed. The men leave as Wonder Woman, Steve, and Dover are all alive, as Steve gets him to find out how the device works since they still have it. We then go to Superman, Hawkgirl, and the Flash, as they're going to go take down the lab where they manage to destroy their defenses. The Flash zooms into the lab to set off the alarm to basically tell all the workers to leave before it blows up. They then destroy the lab as the workers escape, as they manage to find out that they're working on a jet engine, as Jean comes out and explains that it's from the future, and that he knows how Vandal's going to use it. We go back to GL as a soldier that picked a fight with him earlier falls through the floor, as they find a secret runway where they're loading a bunch of tanks and soldiers into planes. Steve and Wonder Woman find out from Dover that the regime's going to attack America instead of England, where they try to alert the Allies as Wonder Woman decides to go in and stop them. As she's leaving, Steve asks what if he doesn't see her again, where she kisses him and then leaves. At the secret facility, GL and the soldiers see Vandal come out of a car, as he's reassured that everything's ready, and that he will lead the invasion, where the soldiers start to shoot at them. Vandal and the general run onto the plane as they take off to start their invasion, where GL decides to grab a motorbike and jump onto the plane. He manages to make it just in time, as we then see the leader of the Blackhawks tell the other League members that the regime's going to attack America instead of England. Flash then runs to get to the US before the planes do, and warn them before they arrive, as we then see GL making his way through the plane. He grabs a pipe and starts destroying a bunch of things to potentially crash the plane, as he manages to make them slow down. When he does, a couple of soldiers manage to grab GL and take him to Vandal. Vandal starts to interrogate him as he keeps shocking him with his gauntlet, where we then see Superman, Jean, and Hawkgirl destroying other planes. As they're destroying them, Wonder Woman comes in and helps them, where they destroy a few of the planes, but the others manage to get their systems working and zoom away. Lucky for them though, the Flash warned the US military about it as they managed to take him down with a few subs. As Vandal's ship is the last standing, GL manages to overpower the soldiers and start to fight Vandal, as he manages to make the plane go down. Hawkgirl then manages to save GL just before the plane crashes into the water, where Vandal's stuck in the plane, and I do like how we see Hawkgirl and GL's relationship slowly develop over time. But as the two other planes turn around, we see the Blackhawks come in and destroy the other two planes that are trying to get away. We then see the General as he has a plan to get Adolf out to be their new leader, where we then see the Justice League as they come back into the present time. When they get back, they see Batman as Superman goes in to hug him, and this moment's honestly great. But the League start to explain to Batman what happened, as the episode then ends with Wonder Woman going to visit Steve, where we see that he's an old man in a retirement home, and shit, he looks pretty fucking good for being 80 or older. Well, hot damn, this episode's good. In my opinion, it isn't as strong as the first part, but it really concludes this three-parter in a really well done way. Vandal becomes a massive threat after he changes his plans to go and attack the US instead of England, since everyone was expecting him to attack England. Vandal still isn't that interesting of a character, but he really is a big threat to the League, which is something. As the rest of the episode goes, it's really just a satisfying conclusion to the 3-parter, where the League managed to stop the regime just before they invade the US. Goes above Legends Part 1, but below Injustice for All Part 1. Damn, the first season of this show is really good. There is not one episode of the show so far that I can say is bad or even average. But I do have one gripe with this season, and I feel like it's still going to be a complaint in Season 2 as well. That complaint is that we honestly have way too many 2- and 3-parter episodes. I love longer episodes as much as the next guy, but I think there could have been a good balance between like 2 to 3-part episodes and singular episodes. I really think that at least 2 or 3 2-parters in this season could have been single episodes, such as Warworld, A Night of Shadows, and probably The Brave and the Bold. But that's not to say that 2 and 3-parters can be a really good thing, especially with Legends, Injustice for All, and The Savage Time. They're all excellent, and I definitely don't see those episodes fitting into a single episode. They just couldn't. Another thing I want to note that I mentioned earlier is that Superman gets slapped around a lot in this season. Shit, even Bruce Timm realized that fans weren't happy about Superman being slapped around a lot, so he decided to make a few changes for Season 2. So with that news, I'm really excited to get into Season 2, and we started off with first episode of Season 2, and it starts off with 2 ships being shot at as we see Steppenwolf in control of one of the ships being shot at. As that's going on, we go to Apocalypse, where Steppenwolf tells Darkseid that he has to retreat, but Desaad tells Darkseid that they disobeyed their treaty with New Genesis. Darkseid says that it's a part of the plan, but they end up losing contact with Steppenwolf, as Orion ends up talking to them to tell them that their plans are over. Darkseid's ships get boom tubed to Apocalypse as they blow up, and cause a lot of destruction on the planet, and even destroy Darkseid's castle. He gets out of the rubble where we see the leader of New Genesis telling Darkseid that this is their last chance because if Darkseid breaks their treaty again, they'll destroy Apocalypse. We then go to Hawkgirl in the Watchtower as Jean walks in as she's watching hawks fly. He asks if she misses her home and ends up talking to her about it. As that's going on, we see Caliban making slaves rebuild Darkseid's castle as Darkseid's talking to Desaad, and after Desaad questions him, he decides to use his Omega beams on him. When he does, lightning starts to strike as a giant ship arrives. We then go back to Jean and Hawkgirl's conversation as she mentions that Thanagar is ages away, but Jean mentions a thought he had where both of them, Superman and Wonder Woman, are all orphans and exiles. As Hawkgirl makes a joke about calling them the Just Us League, the Watchtower starts to shake as Darkseid gets in the Watchtower with a boom tube. Superman starts to beat him up as the League stops him, but Darkseid explains that he actually needs Superman's help since New Genesis has basically fucked up his planet. Darkseid mentions that Superman should help, since Brainiac's apparently alive and trying to get as much information from Apocalypse before destroying it, and Superman's saying, "Good. Like this is cold as fuck." Darkseid ends up leaving as he says that if Brainiac isn't stopped, millions more will die. After he leaves, the League talk about what just happened, as Superman's the only one that has encountered Darkseid before, where Superman's just happy to let him and his planet die. Hey yo, where did Wonder Woman and Superman's cheek lines go? They be gone. But Batman comes in and explains what happened in the Legacy 2-parter and Superman the Animated Series, but basically just says that they still need to take action. That's one criticism for the show that I haven't mentioned until now. I wish we got to see more of how Superman managed to gain everyone's trust again after the Legacy 2-parter. There's some great storytelling potential with that, but anywho, back into the episode. Superman knows that something's wrong with what's going on at the moment, but he'll play along with Darkseid's game as he gets Batman to help him do something. As they do that, we see Brainiac as Darkseid's army tries to attack his ship, but he has no luck and his army gets destroyed. The man tells Darkseid that the League agreed to help him as they boom tube them in, where the League go to put a stop to Brainiac. We see that Superman's plan was boom tubing Batman and Wonder Woman onto New Genesis as the ground shakes where a giant alien comes out to fight them. As the alien's about to eat Wonder Woman, some costume person comes out and saves her and tells Batman to come with them. They end up stopping as the person introduces themselves as Forager, as they question if they know Orion, where he mentions that he's a god far above them. Wonder Woman says that he's modest, where he clarifies that they are literally far above as they're on a floating island. But I love this Batman line.
I'm gonna need a longer grapple.
As they're finding a way to get onto the island, we see the other League members as Superman almost gets to Brainiac but can't break through the force field. We go back as Batman and Wonder Woman fly around the island, where they end up running into a guy where he decides to assault Wonder Woman, then tells them to chase him. Batman ends up stopping him with his cape as they run into Orion. Orion's voice sounds different. Hold on, Orion's voiced by Ron Perlman? Fuck yeah. When they do, we go back to Superman, as he ends up talking to Brainiac, where he explains that he's here to destroy Brainiac, where Superman gets the opening for Darkseid to shoot Brainiac with a beam, as the force field shut off. As they do, Darkseid's army manages to shoot the ship, as Superman and Brainiac fight, until Brainiac manages to get back in the ship and try to fly away, as Superman tries to catch up to him but can't. Superman and Hawkgirl end up getting on the Javelin as they go to try and stop Brainiac, as his ship disappears, where they end up finding out that Brainiac has a hideout on an asteroid as they're pulled into it. Holy shit, this is a good episode. A lot happens, but I really like how they're bringing back both Darkseid and Brainiac. I really like how Superman just goes apeshit on Darkseid when he sees him, considering the last time we saw him he managed to kill Turpin. I'm honestly just really interested to see where this next part goes, as I wonder what Darkseid really has planned. Part 2 picks up right where we left off in the ship, as Jean, Hawkgirl and Superman get led to where Brainiac is. Brainiac comes out and he says that he will give Superman another chance to join him, where Brainiac says that he is Krypton, as he has all of the memories of Krypton inside of him. Superman basically says that he doesn't understand Krypton, as he tells Brainiac to go to hell, but he gets cut off while saying it, where they have to fight some of Brainiac's drones that are shooting at him. They destroy the drones as Brainiac attacks them, but Hawkgirl decimates Brainiac. But more robot bodies of Brainiac come out as we go back to New Genesis, where Orion takes Wonder Woman and Batman to the Highfather, where they explain that Darkseid's under attack. They end up talking as Highfather ends up telling Orion that they will wait for his order to do anything. We go back to Superman, Hawkgirl and Jean as they destroy more of Brainiac's robots, where Darkseid comes out and reveals that he was working with Brainiac. As they get taken down, we see Orion gearing up to stop Darkseid, and after saying that he can't, Batman and Wonder Woman follow Orion in his boom tube. When they go to stop Darkseid, we see Brainiac and Darkseid as they restrain Superman, where Brainiac reveals that he's going to extract DNA from Superman to evolve and become stronger. As Brainiac's extracting DNA from Superman, Darkseid manages to take over his hideout as he now has complete control over Brainiac. Hawkgirl and Jean are still alive as they try to find Superman, as Darkseid tells Superman that Brainiac is the solution to finding the anti-life equation, and plans on rebuilding Earth in his own image. We then see Orion, Wonder Woman and Batman arrive, as Darkseid's boom tubing everything from New Genesis. As that's going on, Hawkgirl and Jean find Darkseid as they try to free Superman, but they have to take out a bunch of Brainiac robots as Orion, Wonder Woman and Batman arrive. They help take out the robots as Batman tries to override the computer, and just ends up destroying it instead since he can't get into it, where Superman's freed. The place starts to blow up, and as the rest of the League leave, Superman decides to stay back and take on Darkseid as we see Orion's already fighting him, and gets his back broken. But Superman comes out and tells Darkseid that he has to get through him to get off this rock, after trying to use Orion's boom tube device where Superman destroyed it. Darkseid mentions that he's beaten him time and time again, where Superman delivers this line that goes so hard.
Because this time, I won't stop until you're just a greasy smear on my fist. Let's go.
So they fight, and also, I didn't notice until now, but why is Darkseid's Omega Beams a different colour? Anywho, Darkseid gets the upper hand on him, as we see the other League members where they realise that Superman stayed behind, where Batman tells the rest of the League to leave, as he's going to go back for him. As he does, Superman gets back up and fights Darkseid again, and as he knocks him down, Batman tells Superman to leave, where he shrugs Batman off. So as Superman's going to finish off Darkseid, Batman jumps onto Superman and uses the boom tube to make him go back, as he was going to die with him as Batman, Superman and Orion get in the boom tube. As they do, Darkseid calls Superman a loser as the whole place blows up. They arrive on New Genesis as Superman tells Batman that he isn't always right. The episode then ends as we see that Orion's still alive, and that Forager managed to save the people of New Genesis by hiding them in his hive before the island was destroyed, where Highfather says that he has now found his place. This episode's even better. It's honestly just great to see Brainiac and Darkseid being big threats again in an episode. The twist that Darkseid double-crossed Brainiac isn't a surprise, but seeing him actually take over Brainiac is awesome and really shows what Darkseid's capable of. I don't have too much to say about this episode, besides it just being an extremely enjoyable episode to watch. Honestly, what a way to start Season 2. This is better than the first part, and one of the best episodes yet. Tabula Rasa starts with Lex fighting Hawkgirl in his battlesuit, where Superman comes in and stops Lex. As Superman's about to get him, Lex damages a boat as the two of them have to go and save the people on the boat. When they do, Lex goes back to his office as he calls out Mercy. And is that meant to be Mercy? They completely changed her look for absolutely no reason, but alright. So as Lex asks for her help, he ends up sick on the floor as Mercy doesn't help him since she's pissed about how Lex just left her with the company whilst he's busy making her fix his mess. She basically says that she managed to recover the company, that she won't give it back to him as Lex starts to choke her asking for Professor Ivo, as she tells him that she fired him. Lex gets shitty about it as Mercy tells him that he's probably at his place, while Lex manages to fly off to go and find him. We then go back to the League as they save the boat from sinking, and the people on board as they're trying to find out what Lex is up to. Speaking about him, we see him arrive at Ivo's place as he finds him dead in a bed, as a thing called Amazo comes up behind him and ends up doing a scan on Lex where he manages to copy his face. Jean ends up seeing this as he's scanning the whole city, and as he scans the city, he hears everyone's thoughts and it starts to get to him as he flies away. We then go back to Lex as he's trying to repair his suit, as Amazo asks when Ivo will get back, as Lex says that he won't and that he will have to take care of him now. He mentions that Amazo needs to take care of him as well, as he might end up in the same position as Ivo since he's dying. After that, we then see Amazo breaking into a factory. He gets through and manages to steal some vial, but as he's escaping, Hawkgirl comes in to stop Amazo. Amazo ends up copying her mace and wings as they fight, where Amazo manages to knock out Hawkgirl, but as he's about to kill her, a guard gets the vial, so he then gets the vial off the guard and then goes back to Lex. Lex figures out that Amazo ran into Hawkgirl, as he's upset that Hawkgirl's still alive, where Lex tells a story about how he had a dream, but the 7 members of the Justice League destroyed that dream of his. He then mentions that he wants to take over, but he can't until the Justice League are dealt with, as Amazo wants to take them down now since Lex says that Amazo will be like a son to him. As that's going on, Superman and Batman manage to get Mercy to cooperate with them, by making her let them know when Lex contacts her, as they're suspicious about a cooperation since she was so close to Lex. We then go back to Jean as he's trying to escape everyone's thoughts, where he talks to Superman and Batman as he tells them to leave him alone, and destroys the earpiece. Jean stops at a river where he transforms into his old self and then runs into the forest. Then we go to Wonder Woman, Hawkgirl, and the Flash as they're trying to find Amazo, but they end up seeing Amazo fighting police officers on the news, so they rush down to stop him. Amazo ends up copying their powers, as even GL comes in to help stop them, but he has absolutely no luck since Amazo even copied his ring. As the League's members are fighting Amazo, Mercy decides to try and ring Lex, and as he goes to answer the phone, he seemingly has a stroke and can't answer, where we then see Batman and Superman finding out that Mercy tried to ring Ivo. As they figure out why Mercy rang Ivo, Superman goes to help the League with Amazo since they're getting their asses kicked, even though GL told them not to make Amazo stronger. Amazo ends up scanning Superman and getting his powers, and that's how the episode ends. Damn, another really good episode. This season's came out swinging already. The best stuff in this episode, in my opinion, is the stuff with Lex and how he manages to manipulate Amazo into helping him to destroy the Justice League. As Amazo goes, it's basically just a robot that can copy anyone's powers by just scanning them, but I think it works well since Amazo's actually a big threat to the Justice League. Also, is the term tabula rasa referring to Amazo since he starts off as a blank slate? Oh, cheeky, I see what you did. But I wonder how the second part will go. And as this episode goes, it's just below Twilight Part 1. Alright, so the second part continues right where we left off with Superman fighting Amazo, but this time around Superman's getting his ass handed to him. Superman manages to knock Amazo down as Batman comes in and shows Amazo his kryptonite as he tries to get away but struggles. Batman figured out that he gets their strengths but also their weaknesses as Amazo manages to jump into the sewer. I love that moment, it goes so fucking hard, but as he gets away we see Mercy go to Lex at Ivo's place as she explains that she's there because Batman and Superman came in trying to find Lex. As she tells Lex that, he starts to pick up his battle suit where we then go back to the League as they couldn't find Amazo and haven't found Lex either, but they're wondering where Jean has gone. Speaking about him, we go back to him as he's having a monologue with himself, as he's really doubting why he's saving people. But whilst that's going on, the Flash, Superman and GL see Ivo's place as it blows up on the Flash's face, but they then manage to put out the fire and get as many files as possible. Amazo sees this all from a distance as he flies away, but we then see Lex in a warehouse as Mercy says that he can stay there for a while. Lex ends up telling her that she only did it because she misses him, and that she misses the excitement, as Mercy says that he isn't good for her. As she's walking away, Lex mentions that he won't be going anywhere, as he has an ally of his that will help take out the League and make things the way they used to be. Speaking about Amazo, he's flying around to try and find Lex, but ends up finding him in the warehouse, as Amazo asks why he left the house. Lex brushes it off and tells Amazo to get rid of the League, since Amazo says that they're still alive, where Amazo says no and that it isn't good enough. We then go back to Jean as he sees some people trying to find someone that's lost in the woods, as he hears their thoughts since they all say that they really want to find them, even in their thoughts as well. As that's going on, the Flash finds Ivo's body as they find the files about Amazo, and that all of it's connected back to Lex. They figure out that Amazo is meant to evolve, as we then go back to Amazo talking to Lex, where Lex says that he has to take out the League instead, and that he can live his own life now if he wants to, but Lex fakes a stroke to make Amazo end the Justice League. As Amazo leaves, Mercy gets shitty about how Lex has been manipulating Amazo, where Lex then reveals that he can kill Amazo whenever he wants, since there's a bomb planted at the bottom of his brain that Lex can activate with a button. We go back to Jean as he ends up finding the girl that they were looking for, as he ends up giving the girl to the people that were looking for her. With his faith restored in humanity, Wonder Woman finds him and hugs Jean, as she says that he isn't getting away that easily. Whilst that's going on, we see the rest of the League going to stop Amazo, where Wonder Woman and Jean are on their way to help. Hawkgirl ends up getting her ass kicked as Batman comes out with Kryptonite again. When he does, Amazo ends up evolving as he just manages to grab the Kryptonite off Batman. As he does, he knocks Batman out of the way and then throws it at Superman. Superman gets hit by it as the Flash manages to get it off him, as the rest of the League then come in to fight Amazo, since the only person's powers that he hasn't copied is Jean. Eventually, as the League are struggling, Lex comes in and helps to take down the League, and as they're about to kill them, Jean lets Amazo scan his body to get his powers, where Amazo realizes that Lex is lying to him all along. Amazo turns on Lex as Lex ends up blowing off Amazo's head, only for it to grow back, where he ends up getting Lex as he rips off his suit and says that none of them have anything to offer him now, as he then turns into gold and flies up into the sky. Jean explains that he's going to where the gods are, as the episode then ends with Mercy answering the phone to where Lex is asking for help but she just hangs up. This episode's honestly even better. Obviously all the same things from the first part apply here, but I really like how Amazo's developed here. You really see him develop from following Lex's every order, to then realize what Lex is actually up to, and when he does, he stops Lex and then just leaves as he doesn't want anything from Earth. There isn't much else to say, besides from this being yet another good episode. It goes above Twilight Part 1 but below Twilight Part 2. Only a Dream starts with the Justice League battling some giant Yu-Gi-Oh looking robot, as the guy that built it named John is talking mad shit, as Superman comes in to stop him. As he comes in, John manages to go and take out Superman, as Lex and the other Injustice members thank him as John wakes up from his dream. When he does, a guard takes him into something called the Barrel, as we see that it's some kind of lab where we see a small version of the robot he was dreaming about. He ends up sitting in the seat in front of it, as it scans him and then the professor tells him to say what are on the cards, without even seeing what's actually on them. John ends up getting every card right, as they figure out that the device actually works, as John says that he could keep helping on it. As he says that, the guard comes back as he says that his parole report is back, as John then talks to his partner named Penny, as it seems to be a setback and that he's working on something new. She ends up breaking the news to him that she's found someone else, where he gets shitty about it. But later that night, we see prisoners trying to break out, and as they try to, John ends up knocking the professor out as he then uses the device to do something to him as he seems to be in pain. We then go to the League as they hear about the prison escape, where some villains manage to escape, as we then see that John is sweating bullets after using the machine. After that, we see Firefly and Volcana, as they manage to take out some officers. Batman and GL manage to trap them both as they pass out, and get handed back into the prison, and at the prison, we see a bunch of inmates as even the guards are in a terrible state. We then go to Penny as we see John watching her, as she sees her new boyfriend from afar, whilst Batman tries to figure out what's going on, and GL goes to help the other members with the other villains that escaped. The main guard that was with John says that he can help Batman, as we then see John approach Penny as he decides to call himself Dr. Destiny, where he transforms himself into Skeletor if he wore a cape. I can't lie, this design goes so fucking hard. But we see that Penny's stuck in a dream as her partner tries to wake her up but can't, as John's still watching from afar. We then go back to the League as they're trying to take down Luminous, Copperhead and Grundy, as both Grundy and Copperhead take on the officers outside. Shit, we're really getting back all the old S-Taz villains, aren't we? Both Volcana and Luminous in the same episode? Anywho, Grundy and Copperhead end up running back inside, where Jean fights Grundy as the Flash takes on Luminous, as he has to take on all of his light clones. Superman ends up seeing the Flash get his ass kicked, as Superman and Hawkgirl quickly put a stop to him, where we see Grundy fighting Jean, as Copperhead tries to get Hawkgirl to make her fly away with him on her. Hawkgirl and GL manage to stop him pretty fast, as all the villains get handed back into the authorities. We go back to Penny as she's still panicking whilst in her dream, where the doctors ended up putting her under, as Jean and Batman approach where Jean tries to get in her mind. As that's going on, I honestly really like this scene where the Flash cares for Hawkgirl after she ends up falling asleep, after asking for some caffeine from the Flash. But we go back to Jean and Batman as Jean finds out that John is Dr. Destiny now, and that he has her stuck in the dream. He apparently wants the Justice League as well, as Batman's wondering why because they only just found out who he is today, as we then see the other League members falling asleep. Even the Flash ends up falling asleep, as the episode then ends with us seeing the Watchtower whilst Dr. Destiny's laughing. This is just a banger. God damn. This episode's mainly just a lot of build up to what we will see in the next part, but it's honestly really interesting to see a new villain come into the picture that can attack you in your dreams. It's also a big surprise to see villains that we haven't seen in a long time, such as Luminous, Volcana, and Firefly. But I just hope that Dr. Destiny becomes a massive threat in the second part, since I really fuck with his character so far. The episode goes above Twilight Part 1 but below Tabula Rasa Part 2. Part 2 picks up with the Flash sitting with a bunch of kids as they're watching some exaggerated cartoon on how the Flash beats Solomon Grundy, as they seem to enjoy it. One of the kids asks a lot of questions as he then offers them food, but a frog's in the fridge. And as the Flash tells the kid that there's no food, he bites the Flash as the other kids all get sharp teeth like that kid. The Flash runs away to see the whole world frozen in place, as Dr. Destiny approaches him and says that he went too fast and that he won't ever slow down again. Flash knows that he's in a dream as he tries to wake himself up, but Dr. Destiny tells him that he's going to be stucky and that he'll be alone forever. He hears a phone ring, which is his alarm, and as he tries to answer the phone it doesn't work, as Dr. Destiny says that there won't be a wake-up call, and then he disappears. Batman tries to ring the League's members to tell them to not go to sleep, as we then see Clark in a dream where he accidentally lasers Lewis to death. Then we see John in a dream as everyone he knows seems to be scared of him, as Dr. Destiny tells him that everyone's now scared of him where he realizes that it's a dream. As he realizes that, his skin starts to peel from his ring's energy, as Batman and Jean get both GL and Clark, as Jean takes him to the Watchtower. Batman says that he needs to try and stop Dr. Destiny as he's used to the late hours, and that whilst he's using his powers, his body must be vulnerable, so he has to find John. Batman goes to find him as we see Hawkgirl trying to wake up the Flash, but she surprisingly woke up even after Dr. Destiny tried to get in her dreams. It's then revealed that Jean was actually Dr. Destiny, as he manages to tie her wings together and makes her fall into a grave where she's buried alive. That's cold as fuck. But we see Jean as he's trying to help Hawkgirl, Clark and GL out, as Jean rings Batman and says that he needs to go in their minds to try and save them, as Penny apparently didn't make it. We then go into Clark's dream as he destroys Metropolis, and then accidentally kills Jimmy Olsen as Jean comes in to tell Clark that this is all just a dream. Clark flies away to his family home as Jean tries to help Clark, and ends up doing so as he seems to be his old self. As that's going on, Batman's struggling to stay awake whilst driving the Batmobile, as he almost goes off the cliff after nearly driving into a truck. Jean then manages to help GL out by trying to take on Dr. Destiny with Superman's help, as GL almost helps by fighting against Dr. Destiny where he ends up disappearing. Whilst they're trying to help the other League's members that are still asleep, we see Batman struggling to stay awake as Dr. Destiny is telling him to go to sleep. Batman manages to get some coffee whilst he's out, as we then see the League trying to help the Flash as Hawkgirl's still panicking whilst being buried alive. But it keeps going from the dreams back to Batman as Dr. Destiny is still trying to make Batman go to sleep, where he breaks one of the Batmobile's windows to keep a breeze coming in, as he also turns up the music to keep himself awake. Back in the dreams, the Flash ends up unfreezing the world around him, as they all have to beat Dr. Destiny, where Batman goes to a LexCorp facility as Batman keeps seeing visions of Dr. Destiny. Keeps seeing visions of him since his power gets stronger the closer he gets to John, and Batman manages to keep him out of his mind by humming a song. Back in the Flash's dream, the League end up knocking Dr. Destiny's shit in, as they go to help Hawkgirl but can't get out of the Flash's mind. As Batman's getting close to John, Batman starts to see different visions, as Batman manages to keep them out by humming the song. And as John tries to jump Batman with the Arcane, Batman manages to knock him down where John accidentally injects himself with it. The episode then ends with Hawkgirl waking up, as Batman's snoring, but John has the song that Batman was humming to him stuck in his head. This episode's great. I just love how Dr. Destiny really gives the League an actual challenge, and that Batman is the one that manages to actually beat John by figuring out a way to keep him out of his head. It's honestly excellent and shows one of the main reasons why Batman's useful to the League. That's obviously because of his smarts. But this episode's really good, so it goes above Tabula Rasa Part 2, but just below Twilight Part 2. Maid of Honor starts with Diana at a party of some kind at the French Museum, where everyone knows that she's Wonder Woman. They all try to get her attention as Bruce manages to pull her away and asks her to dance. She says yes as it gets her away from the people that are trying to get her attention. They dance and chat for a bit as people then try to break in and try to take Princess Audrey of Kaznia, as Wonder Woman saves her and stops the men that were trying to take her. One of them is about to get away in the helicopter as Wonder Woman stops them too. We then go to the aftermath as Princess Audrey thanks Wonder Woman for saving her, as she's trying to find out who would have tried to kidnap Audrey. As they're chatting, her father rings her and says that they're going to attack back, and he wants her home as soon as possible. Audrey manages to convince him to let her stay out since Wonder Woman's still with her, where she helps Wonder Woman to get some new clothes since her dress that she was wearing is all torn up. So Wonder Woman wants the answers, but she explains that she wants to go clubbing because it's her last night of being a free woman since she's getting married tomorrow. As they end up leaving the crime scene, We see three men break into a Star Labs facility in Paris, where they steal some kind of processor as Batman comes in to try and stop them. He manages to stop one of the men as the other two run away with the processor. So as Batman interrogates the man left behind, we get yet another fantastic moment in the show. We then see the two men who got away as they give Colonel Vox a processor, and they mention that their plans can't be stopped by Batman or the Justice League. As that's going on, we go to Wonder Woman with Audrey as they're in her limo, but she still tries to find out who would try and kidnap Audrey. She brushes it off for a bit until she mentions that some people are upset about the money that they're putting into building an international space station. She doesn't seem too happy about her arranged marriage, but wants to party as much as possible tonight, as she tells Wonder Woman to try and keep up. They end up running into a taxi and then getting away from her guards, as they then manage to get their way into a nightclub after a bouncer recognizes Wonder Woman. As they get in and Audrey gets a few men, a bunch of paparazzi try to snap photos of her as Wonder Woman flies Audrey out of the nightclub. They end up on the Eiffel Tower as Audrey seems to be happy about the night that they had together, but she's still upset that she has to marry the man that her father wants her to. And then as one last act of fun, she decides to jump off the Eiffel Tower as Wonder Woman saves her. Audrey then leaves after Wonder Woman wonders why the hell she did that, and when Wonder Woman gets back to her room, Batman's waiting for her. He saw why she was out late and what she got up to, as Batman explains that he caught a robbery at Star Labs. He also explains that the man he caught was a Kasnian soldier, as Wonder Woman explains that Audrey wouldn't do anything like that. So with that information, Wonder Woman decides to ask Audrey about it, but she seems to have no idea about it as her and her father wouldn't do anything like that. She apologizes as they then go to Audrey's engagement party to find out that the man that she's marrying is Vandal motherfucking Savage. Apparently not, since this is apparently Vandal Savage III, and the one they fought in the Savage time was his grandfather. He understands why Wonder Woman's angry, since his grandfather was an evil person, but he then excuses himself where Wonder Woman apologizes to Audrey since she didn't mean to insult him. We see Vandal as Wonder Woman approaches him, where he explains that his project at the moment is trying to be a peaceful exploitation of space, and that he really does love Audrey. Wonder Woman has a hard time believing all of this, as we see Colonel Vox come up to Vandal as Wonder Woman leaves. When she does, Vandal says that it's time to make the calls, as we then see astronauts go into a spaceship. As the spaceship launches, we see Audrey's father as he gets poisoned by one of his maids, as she mentions that Vandal Savage sends his regards. We go back to the astronauts as they arrive on the space station and then hold all the people inside at gunpoint. They tell Vandal that they got the space station under control, as we see Vandal tell Audrey that her father had a stroke and is now paralyzed, as they're going to go back to him as soon as possible. Wonder Woman's then talking to Bruce about the Vandal Savage situation, as they're trying to find out if he's Vandal Savage or not, since she's still got an odd feeling about him. Bruce then discovers that the King conveniently suffered a stroke as Wonder Woman's trying to warn Audrey about Vandal, but they take off on a plane and she tries to find her. So Wonder Woman tries to chase after them as Colonel Vox comes out to fight her. He eventually knocks her out with a Soundwave, as we then see Audrey seeing her father in the state he's in, but she decides that she needs to rule Kasnia in the meantime. She says that they should get married as soon as possible, where Vandal says that nothing would make him happier, as her father hears all this going on but can't say anything. This is just a solid episode. It really isn't amazing, but I just have to see where it all goes in the second part. That's the problem with so many two-parters. You usually have to wait for the second part to really say a lot about it all. But as this part goes, it's alright. I just don't think that we needed Vandal Savage back, but if you really needed him back, I would think that having him being revealed at the end of the episode would have been much better and more impactful. I don't quite understand what Vandal's trying to do either, which kind of sucks since he's setting up his plan but you don't really know what he's trying to achieve. Anyways, this goes at the bottom of the list. The second part picks up basically right where we left off, as Batman finds Wonder Woman waking up in a barn. Batman tells Wonder Woman the news about Audrey's wedding, since it's happening right now where she decides to go there. When she arrives, 3 fighter jets try to stop her, but they obviously get destroyed. More of them come out as Batman tries to come out and help with his Batwing, where we see the wedding start. We cut back and forth between the wedding and Wonder Woman fighting off Vandal's men, as Wonder Woman manages to break into the wedding just in time. When she tells Audrey about Vandal, he shocks her as his men take her away, where they actually end up getting married. They dance at their celebration, as that night in bed, Audrey finds out that Vandal's gone somewhere. She decided to go and see Wonder Woman, as she tries to tell Audrey about what he's up to, but she doesn't believe her at all and thinks that Wonder Woman is a lunatic. She leaves and then finds Vandal in the secret military room, as he then grabs her staff and sits in a chair, which she's shocked by. Batman then sees Wonder Woman captive as he tries to get contact with the Watchtower for help. The Flash responds, but then the Flash, GL, and John find out about Vandal, and that he took over a space station which is holding an asteroid-type weapon where you can just shoot them wherever he wants them to. He shoots an asteroid at a few ships as it completely wipes them out, where Vandal says that their armies are strongest in the world now. The League decides that taking out the weapon is priority number 1 at the moment, as Batman's on his own with trying to save Wonder Woman. As the League approaches the space station, they start to attack them as their ship gets shot down when they crash into the station. Audrey's questioning why Vandal's doing all of this, as he reveals that he's the original Vandal Savage, and he goes into a backstory where an asteroid ended up making him become immortal. He's apparently over 25,000 years old, and yeah, I ain't really a fan of this backstory. Seems a bit weird, since when we originally saw him, I thought he was just someone living in the modern times that time travelled back to be the new world leader by winning World War II. Apparently not now, which kinda sucks, but he thinks that he's meant to be a leader. He then reveals to Audrey that he poisoned her father, and as she scratches Vandal, she gets taken by the guards. We go back to the League members as they try to stop the astronauts with guns, as we see Batman breaking in to save Wonder Woman. He manages to free her as we see the League run into more astronauts because apparently there are like 1 million of them there, as GL finds the hostages. We cut back again as Wonder Woman and Batman get Audrey, as she takes them to the control room as Vandal plans to use the railgun on Paris. As he's about to do so, GL saves the Flash from being stuck out in space, as Wonder Woman and Batman break into the facility and take down some of Vandal's men. They then make their way through Colonel Vox, as Batman throws Vandal around as he activates the railgun, where Batman manages to change the direction of the shot to them as they all evacuate. Vandal gets left inside as the asteroid crashes in on them, as the League also leaves the space station as it blows up. As Audrey and Wonder Woman look at the aftermath, we see Vandal come out of the ground as Audrey gets her men to take him away. The episode then ends as Wonder Woman says that they didn't get to finish their dance, as Batman says that she doesn't know what she's talking about, as she says that he's still taking her dancing. Yeah, this part really is better. It's not amazing or anything, but it's mainly better because we start to actually understand what Vandal wanted to do and his motivation in this two-parter. I really think the backstory they came up with and the fact that he's immortal is pretty lame, since he literally could have used Rage to fill that role, but it's still good. Vandal isn't that great of a character in this two-parter, which is unfortunate, but this one goes above the first part but below Tabula Rasa Part 2. Hearts and Minds is just one of those episodes that just hits differently. It's not about the epic battles or flashy superpowers, it's about an internal struggle our heroes face when their minds and hearts are put to the test. The episode kicks off with the League facing off against Despero, a ruthless tyrant with mind control abilities, but what makes this episode truly special is how it explores the theme of empathy and understanding. Hold on, I don't say shit like that. Well, surprise surprise, I tried to see what ChatGPT thought my videos were like and it definitely got it wrong. Anywho, I don't know why ChatGPT said that the episode starts with the League fighting Despero, when it's actually a few Green Lantern Corps members fighting Despero's army. But from there we see GL, Hawkgirl and the Flash at the Watchtower as an alarm goes off. They see something headed towards Earth as it crash lands, where we see that it's Kilowog, since he was the only one to get out of the fight at the start of the episode. Kilowog said that they got someone as he passes out, but GL flies off to try and get answers. Back at the Watchtower, we see Kilowog as John's helping him out with his wounds as he wakes up. He then tells the League's members that a cult named the Legion of the Third Eye invaded a planet, as the GL members had to try to stop them and Despero, but failed. They underestimated him, as the others he was with were lost in the battle, but we see GL find out that one of the core cruisers has been destroyed. He ends up finding where they are, as he ends up on the planet Kellanor and tries to make his way to them. As that's going on, Kilowog heals, and tells the League's members that John is probably going to go find the GL members on Kellanor, but he has to charge his ring to take the League there. Whilst Kilowog's trying to find John's lantern battery, we see John in disguise as he manages to find his trainer, named Kat's ring. As he does, he gets knocked out by two of Despero's men, where we go back to Kilowog and the Flash where they're looking through John's place to find the battery. As they do, the owner of the building, an old lady, tries to get them to leave, as Kilowog finds the battery and they rush out of there. We go back to John as he's being taken to Despero, where he wants to be the new Order to the Universe and wants to take over the Guardians. Also, fuck yeah, that's Keith David. God, I love that man's voice. But to me, he'll always be Spawn. That's a show I'd potentially talk about in the future. Anywho, Despero explains his backstory where he was an outcast and was forced out of his village because of his third eye. When he was casted out, a few thieves tried to jump him, as a great flame came out and melted the thieves, where he was spared. When he was spared, he heard the flame talk to his third eye, so he then made his way back to the village where he told the people about this, as people started to worship him. As he is explaining his backstory, he shows John that he has the flame behind the giant doors, and as he shows John the flame, he manages to knock the guards away, and then he tries to fight Despero. When he does, Despero manages to overpower him with his third eye, as we see that Kat became a worshipper, where she's now ordered to throw John into the flame. She ends up doing so, as we then see John end up in some kind of lab, as he ends up in the lair of the Resistance. They explain that they managed to transport his matter away from the flame before he ended up falling to his death, as they've managed to save a few people from the flame. As they mention that, Kat comes out and mentions that it's the best she could come up with, where she also punches John, wondering why he's here. The other two men leave as they talk, where she explains that she's been doing undercover work, where she managed to survive the battle. She found out that Despero's gone to try and go on a conquest to take over the universe, but she needs to go back so Despero isn't suspicious about her, and damn, John be pullin'. Anywho, Despero's talking to the flame where he wants the power of the flame, as he can spread the light of the flame across the universe, as Despero's men around him get power from the flame, as they're all going around the universe to take over it. Just another good episode. It's solid overall, nothing too amazing about it, but I will say I really do like Kilowog and the Flash's chemistry together in this episode. They aren't together for that long, but I really enjoy it and I think that it works well. Also, another bonus is having Keith David voicing Despero, because obviously Keith David is a compliment, but I'm definitely intrigued to see how much of a threat Despero on his own can be in the next episode, since you don't really see him do anything besides beat John in this episode. Goes above Maid of Honor Part 1, but below Maid of Honor Part 2. Part 2 picks up with Kat talking to the Resistance about what Despero's been up to, as he made his army stronger to take over the universe. As they're talking, Despero's men invade them, as John's ring seems to be flat, where Kat has to try and take them out since her ring's still working. They manage to take out a few guards but fall back where two tanks end up blocking their path, as Hawkgirl, Jean, the Flash, and Kilowog come in to help them. They take them out as they go to their hideout, where Jean can read the writing on the wall, as a certain tree has some kind of significance. We then see John with Kat as his ring isn't working, where they think that Despero did something to him where it made his ring not work. So they figure out that Kat will have to retrain John to teach him how to use his ring again to potentially get it to work again, as Hawkgirl seems to be kinda jealous if you ask me. Anywho, a lieutenant tells Despero that the non-believers escaped and that he failed him, where he gets told to walk into the desert with normal robes like he did in the past. Despero tells the other man that his men need to go back out to get them again, as everyone needs to believe his word. We go back to Kat training John, where John gets sick of her shit and says that she is the problem, since she treats him like a kid. John walks past Hawkgirl where she mentions that she was a bit of an edge to her, and when John mentions that she still treats him like a kid, Hawkgirl mentions that it could be just her clinging on to when she remembered John best. So Hawkgirl then tells him that he should get back in there and try again, where even she gets a bit flirty with him. Told you she was probably jealous earlier. But as that's going on, John and the Flash try to find out what Despero's weakness is, as he figures out that Despero has a power source like the Green Lantern Corps, where they figure out that they need to take out the flame. They find out that they can get rid of it with carbon, as one of the Resistance men is looking very suspicious. We then see Despero's men take out an army fleet, as they manage to take over their planet with the flame, where their whole planet becomes believers as well. After that, we see the same guy from the Resistance go to Despero, where he tells them their plans and that he can show Despero their hideout. We then go to their hideout, where Kat mentions that Kyle Rayner's going to have to take over as Earth's Green Lantern, since John seemed to have given up on himself. Hawkgirl gets a bit shitty with Kat, but then talks to John where she knows that he has more to offer than just his ring, as he's getting ready to get to the flame, where Hawkgirl seemed to have made John a bit happier. As Kilowog's making the carbon bomb, Despero's men invade their base as Kilowog, the Flash, and John manage to escape with the carbon bomb, as Hawkgirl, John, and Kat get captured. Despero mentions that he's launching more and more fleets of men to take over the universe, as they're all gonna have to embrace the power of the flame, where Despero uses it on Kat. Whilst that's happening, Kilowog, Zhong, and the Flash are making their way through the headquarters, as we see that Kat's being controlled by the flame, where Despero has plans to make Hawkgirl one of his personal attendants. He tries to take over her, where John manages to get his ring to come back to him just before she gets taken over, as he gets himself and Hawkgirl out of their restraints. John takes on Despero as we see Kilowog, John, and the Flash get to the flame, and as they're about to throw the bomb in the flame, John tells them to stop. He mentions that the flame is a sentient being which is currently in pain, as it wants to make contact with him. John ends up jumping into the flame as he embodies the flame, where it explains that the flame was used for selfish needs, and that Keltar can be a peaceful planet again if you embrace the light. The flame then ends up growing into a tree where Despero's power is gone, as he gets wrapped up by thorns from the tree and pulled into the ground. All of Despero's men turn into trees as well, whilst trying to take over the other planets, as the giant tree at the flame ends up growing all around the planet. The League then leave as the planet seems to be peaceful once again, where John and Hawkgirl have a bit of a heart-to-heart. Once again, the second part's better. One thing I really noticed throughout this show is that their villains get their time to shine in the second part 90% of the time, but not so much in the first part, and that's definitely true here. We actually get to see Despero being a real threat in this episode compared to the first part, where he starts to take over the universe, but he loses when John embodies the flame and lets it overpower Despero, since the flame is basically just symbolism for peace. I say that because Despero tries to use it to make people think that peace can be achieved by controlling people, where the flame just naturally makes the planet peaceful again at the end of the episode by restoring the planet to how it used to be. I also really like how Hawkgirl and GL's relationship develops in this episode, and I know that we will get a bit more of it later on, which I'm looking forward to. But this episode goes above Maid of Honor Part 2, but below Tabula Rasa Part 1. Now, this is a two-part I've been looking forward to watching again. So it starts with the League getting through some men with laser guns at the White House, as Superman ends up getting to the President's office where Lex is grabbing papers. Superman tells Lex that he still wanted more, and now the world's on the brink of war thanks to him, and he let it get this far because of the law and the people. Lex taunts Superman until he decides to whip out a button to some bomb to make Superman stop, where he says that he can stop him, but Lex knows that those ways of stopping him involve deadly force. So with that, Lex points out that Superman can't do anything since he won't kill Lex, and even says that Superman's his accomplice because he won't kill Lex. Lex then says that he only didn't kill him because of his ego, so he then goes to press the button where Superman fucking kills Lex, accepting the fact that he isn't a hero anymore. Batman smells something as they're fighting off Lex's men in the hallway, so they then rush into the office to see that Superman killed Lex with his laser vision. Wonder Woman asks if Superman's alright, but he then says that he's feeling great. Well, holy shit, that's a way to start an episode, but I'm all in for it. From there, we skip 2 years into the future at the Watchtower, as a bunch of men are controlling the Watchtower with the League having different costumes. Jean notices a storm in a sector, as Superman's talking to the President about the election. We then see GL talking to Hawkgirl as he mentions that he expects him to zoom in any second, which implies that the Flash is dead in this universe, where Hawkgirl says that she misses him too. They then go and see Jean as they see a protest going on, where they were going to go and stop it, but Jean tells them not to, as he ends up letting them go since they mentioned that one spark could start the fire. I really like the subtle hints as to how the world works and what kind of leadership it has, since it's obviously different from Earth, and it's done really well here. Anyway, GL and Hawkgirl ask if Superman wants to come, but he doesn't want to as he has a dinner date, where they even try to get Batman to come but he says no. So GL and Hawkgirl arrive at the protest where the police are making their move on them, as the protesters spot GL and Hawkgirl and decide to run away. As that's going on, we see Superman on his date with Lois, as he wonders what's wrong with Lois, as she mentions that the world's been in lockdown for the past 2 years, and that free speech is basically dead. Superman explains that he's explained it to her 1,000 times before, and that she can't see the big picture, but she puts it back on him and tells Superman that he can't see the bigger picture since he wants to be worshipped by everyone on the planet. Superman's date gets interrupted by Batman, where he says that he needs to see the League's members, and as Superman's leaving his dinner date, Lois is trying to follow him where a guard cuts her off at the front door, since no one's allowed to leave their homes or contact anyone. Batman then shows the League's members a video of the normal Justice League fighting Lex, where Batman explains that they're currently fighting Lex in another dimension, and that their Flash is still alive. Batman also mentions that they don't call themselves the Justice Lords like they do. They call themselves the Justice League, where they say it's sad that they can't help them. Batman says that they actually can help them, where he shows off an interdimensional teleporter, which will take him to their dimension where they decide to go into the portal. So as the League are fighting Lex, he gets his hands on a device where the Flash manages to destroy it before he uses it, as Wonder Woman gets him with her lasso. Jean from the other dimension comes to say that their dimensions are colliding together and that they need help from the Justice League, where they agree to come with Jean to the other dimension. When they do, they get trapped in a giant electrical box, as Hawkgirl almost gets out, but the League all get knocked out. We then see an asteroid crash on Earth where fucking Doomsday comes out and destroys everything in his path in Metropolis, as the Justice Lords teleport into their dimension. The Justice Lords decide to help out by stopping Doomsday, but they put up a good fight against him. Eventually, after fighting Doomsday for a while, Superman decides to lobotomize Doomsday as he's about to be killed, and when walking off, the press comes up to him, where Lois asks why Superman decided to lobotomize him, since it's very out of character. The other men of the press agree with what Superman did, as the episode ends with Lex saying that it isn't them. Holy shit, this episode's fantastic! This show always does fantastic Elseworld stories, and this is the best one without a doubt. This to me makes more sense than shit like Injustice where Superman just completely snaps. This makes more sense because of the build up over time where Lex keeps putting their lives at risk, so Superman decides to change his ways by being more of a dictator if anything. It just makes sense and it isn't over the top either, which is something I really like about it. I will say though, we haven't seen much of Batman, so I wonder if you'll get more of a spotlight in the second part. This may be controversial, but this is the best episode so far. So the second part picks up as the League are waking up, where they're being held in a prison as Batman asks the other Batman why they're doing this. He explains that he did this because they wouldn't do what needed to be done. Batman figures out that the other one has thought of everything, so the League won't be able to escape their restraints. The other Batman talks to the Flash as he obviously isn't happy about being restrained, where he almost mentions that their Flash is dead, but as he's about to, he walks away. Batman tells the Flash that he likes him, and that's probably because their Flash is dead, and that all of this had to have happened from something, where the Flash then tries to ask him if there's a way out of here, as Batman says that he doesn't know and won't figure out a way to get out of their restraints. As that's going on, we see the Justice Lords blocking off every entry to the Watchtower, as we then see the Flash flatline whilst being restrained. The other Batman panics and opens the door to let the Flash out, where he then knocks out Batman and gets out, where he manages to get the rest of the League out since Batman knows what code he would use. But I really like this moment where Batman tells the Flash that basically no one can anticipate him.
I couldn't. Not with him anticipating everything I could ever think of. But who could anticipate you?
So the League get out as they have to find Hawkgirl since she's being held in a hospital, where Batman has to find the interdimensional portal. The rest of the League figure out that Hawkgirl must be at Arkham, as we see a lobotomized version of the Joker, and if you ask me, this is honestly quite disturbing to see the Joker so calm. But they walk through the asylum as they see that many villains have been lobotomized, and as the Joker's going to take them to Hawkgirl, Joker ends up saying the alarm because one woman didn't say the password for the day. Superman comes out from behind the door as we see that it's a few Superman robots as Batman finds the portal at the Batcave where the Batmen fight. We go back to the League as they're fighting the Superman robots and getting their asses kicked, where we see Poison Ivy tell the Flash that he isn't allowed to pick the flowers. The Flash sees the fighting going on inside, so he decides to go and help the League, where we see the other Batman beat the normal Batman after this awesome speech.
You grabbed power, and with that power, we've made a world where no 8-year-old boy will ever lose his parents because of some punk with a gun.
So from there, both Batmen decide to go to Arkham since the League are tearing it apart with their fight, as we then see the League take out the robots. Whilst on their way, Batman's surprised with how clean Gotham is, where the other Batman mentions that to make people respect the big laws, you've also got to enforce the small ones. So as they stop at a red light because Batman decides to listen to him by following the small laws, we see a man voiced by Mark Hamill as he complains about his check. When he does, he gets taken into police custody, where Batman mentions that their mum and dad would love it here, as they drive away. Eventually at the asylum, GL gets the Hawkgirl as he frees her, but as the League's going to escape, the army are out the front waiting for them. As they are, the other Batman tells the general that they are his prisoners, as they all decide to leave at the back, where Superman thinks that it's the normal Batman in disguise, but it's actually the other Batman since he had a change of heart. They go back to the Batcave where the other Batman explains that their Flash is dead, and since then they eventually went rogue. After that conversation, the other Batman sends the League back to their dimension as the rest of the Justice Lords are still in their dimension, so when they get back, Batman figures out that they have to cross some kind of line to beat them, which gets Superman thinking. We then see the Justice Lords at the Watchtower as Lex escapes again, but the Justice Lords pay him a surprise visit. But when they do, it was actually a trap for the Lords, as Jean was disguised as Lex, but the Justice Lords get trapped in the same way that the League did, but they all manage to not get knocked out since Hawkgirl stopped the electricity before they all passed out. As she does, the League fight the Justice Lords, and as the other Superman's about to lobotomize the Flash, Superman comes out with Lex as he lets him use the weapon that he had in the first part on the other Superman. The weapon knocks out Superman and then he uses it against the other Justice Lords, as it apparently takes their powers away, where the Justice Lords are defeated. As they're defeated, Lex aims the weapon on Superman, as it would be so sweet to use it on him, but he follows through with his deal that he had with Superman as he gives him back the weapon. Superman let Lex free in exchange for his help with the Justice Lords, since Superman knew that the Flash couldn't get the other Superman to change his ways, since he's had the same thoughts before, but he's never followed through with it. But the episode then ends with Lex talking to the press as they're asking questions about his deal with Superman, as he mentions that he's had his thoughts about getting into the world of politics. I really didn't think it could get better from here, but it did. So I was right about Batman having more of a highlight in this episode, which is honestly fantastic, since it's believable that he managed to change his ways after our Batman managed to convince him that their ways are wrong. I also love how Lex and Superman managed to work together for once. It's just something different to see them working together in the final fight to beat the Justice Lords with the weapon that was established early into the first part. It's excellent. Another thing I will say is that even though Arkham looks a million times cleaner and nicer, It's also disturbing just knowing that Superman lobotomized so many villains just to make the world the way he wants it to be. This is definitely going to the top of the list. What a way to finish this two-parter. The clip starts with a few soldiers out in the desert as they're trying to find the target named Murphy that they were after, but they end up finding him running around as they run into a cave. They go in after him as they find many skulls in the cave, and then they find some kind of crystal as they get attacked by Murphy. Also, I had to look up who voices Murphy, and it is the most random person that they could have got. It's Tracy Walter, the guy that plays Bob the Goon in Tim Burton's Batman. You remember Bob, right? You should, because of his kick-ass action figure. They eventually knock him out, and as one of them grabs the crystal, they get taken over by some kind of spirit. He starts to shoot at them all, but then decides to get his other men stuck inside the building with a grenade as he walks away whilst being possessed by the crystal. We then go to the Flash as he's going to go stop a bank robbery, as he takes on a few villains from his rogues gallery, as the kid he ran past earlier gives him a Lightspeed energy bar for attending to a commercial for their product. As the ad finishes, there's a man on a TV show criticizing the Flash for shilling out, and says that's all the heroes want to do, as GL cracks it at the Flash for doing product endorsements. GL, after cracking it, asks what the Flash needs the money for, as he finds out that the Flash bought himself a van for certain activities, as he shows GL around the van. They then see on the TV inside the van the same man that's criticizing the Flash, as the Flash decides to drop in himself, where he confronts the TV show host. When he gets there, he embarrasses himself live on TV, where he doesn't really have the answers to his questions, and even GL's embarrassed about what the Flash did on TV. We then go back to the cave as their target wakes up, where he explains that it's the end of the world, where he decides to disguise himself as one of the soldiers. Whilst that's going on, we go back to the TV show host, as the Justice League aren't showing up to his talk show, as more and more people seem to be getting on his side. The League are watching it from the watchtower as one woman's about to go down herself and deal with him, as GL and the Flash stop her from doing so. We then go to a military base as they're testing out some nukes, where the mind-controlled soldier breaks in. He goes in after one of the nukes, so the men decide to cancel the test as he then gets caught by the soldiers before getting to the nukes. Then we see the Flash do another product endorsement as he doesn't like the script where his agent tries to make him stay on set and just say his lines. The director's shit talks to Flash as he then leaves where the set collapses on the director, and he then gets out where he says to the Flash's agent that he owes him financially for the full production and reimbursements. As he walks off, the Flash's agent decides to go on the talk show to shit talk to Flash, where we go back to the soldier being interrogated as he doesn't know what the hell just happened. He seems to be out of the mind control as he has absolutely no idea what he did, where we see that the general's holding the crystal and is being mind controlled by it. The general decides to steal all the information about the nukes that he needs, as he then sees what the Flash did on the commercial set as it's aired on the talk show. The general then knows that he needs to get the Justice League's attention, and as the Flash is talking to his agent, he decides to attack the power plant. The League arrives as the plant's blowing up, where the general dresses up in a villain costume whilst the League has to put a stop to him. GL and the Flash have to get rid of all the flames as they manage to do so, whilst one woman goes after the new villain. She ends up restraining him where she ends up grabbing the crystal, as the episode then ends when the Flash saves the man from falling as one woman throws him off the railing, as she walks away humming with the crystal in her hand. Damn, we're really back to the not so good episodes, are we? The thread of this episode is honestly just quite lame, where people are just getting mind controlled by the crystal to do what it wants. It's just not interesting at all. But the most interesting stuff is with the talk show where he's constantly after the League and trying to prove to everyone that the League isn't as good as everyone thinks they are. It's very similar to the Batman Beyond episode sneak peek, but not as good since it isn't the main focus of the episode, unfortunately. Since the talk show host getting dirt on the Justice League is actually interesting to watch because of how the League reacts to the situations. Goes at the bottom for the season. Part 2 starts at the talk show as he shit talks the League since the power was out for millions of people because of what happened at the power plant. The host wants to outlaw the Justice League, as we then see the Flash's agent back out from helping the Flash because of the negative attention he's been gaining. Whilst that's going on, the Army and GL are interrogating the General, where one woman overhears their whole conversation since she's still under the mind control from the crystal. The League leave the police station as Murphy knocks out the Flash and GL, where he fights Wonder Woman since he knows that she's being mind controlled. He's about to kill Wonder Woman where GL manages to stop him, where they manage to put him in a hospital as he tells them that this thing will have their vengeance. As the Flash is about to leave, Murphy mentions something being forever eclipsed, where the Flash notices that he said that before, where he decides to hear him out. He then explains that there was an ancient war between man and snake amphibians, as men eventually won the war, but just before they did, the Snake General put his and a few other snakes' souls into the crystal. Because the crystal holds their spirits, whoever touches the crystal gets controlled by them to destroy humanity. Murphy's men eventually build a fortress around the crystal to stop anyone from getting to it, and that's why he's here now since he's trying to get the crystal before it takes over more people. The Flash finds out that he can use Morpheus' gem to stop the effects of the crystal, or decapitate the person being controlled by the crystal. So the Flash goes to the Watchtower as the Flash lets Jean know what's going on, as he then goes to check on Wonder Woman. She seems to be fine, but the League find out that someone has breached their security in the Javelin Bay, as they find out that it was Jean messing with the ship, where he doesn't remember that happening. The Flash uses Morpheus' gem on Jean, where he seems to be clean, as well as Wonder Woman. But as the Flash is going to use it on Superman, GL destroys it as he's under the crystal's control. The League fights GL until the crystal falls out of his hand, where Hawkgirl smashes it, where the shattered pieces go all over the League, besides from the Flash, as the rest of the League try to get the Flash. Eventually, the Flash escapes them by getting into their vents after losing Superman in the elevator shaft, where he overhears Wonder Woman talking about the Snake People's plan. Their plan is to cover the sun with a piece from the ship, as it will wipe out all of humanity, and as they're fulfilling their plan, they hear the Flash in the vents. Eventually, the device that they send out to the sun hits it, as it starts to destroy the sun and put the Earth into darkness, as the Flash manages to find a high voltage device that makes the vengeful spirits leave them. Let me say that when the League get hit by the light, half of the screams that are mixed in there are just stock scream sound effects, and it's honestly distracting. But as the League get back up, the Flash shows them what's going on as they find a way to destroy the device. They find out that the Flash might be able to get there in time with GL's help, as he manages to get to the sun in time and throw the device to fix the sun. It manages to work as it pulls the effects of the other device away, where the sun's completely restored to how it was before. The Flash and GL get back to the Watchtower, as we see the TV host in a much smaller budget show where no one seems to be watching him anymore. The episode then ends with the Flash's agent telling him about endorsement offers, as the Flash turns him down, but he gets Morpheus to do it instead, which is actually quite funny since no one knows who he is. But hey, at least this episode's better than the first part. The best part about it is seeing the League being possessed by the spirits and going after the Flash, since he's the only one that could stop them at that point. Besides that, there isn't really much to the episode itself. Still enjoyable, but it goes above the first part, but below Maid of Honor Part 1. The Terror Beyond starts with what seems to be soldiers finding Solomon Grundy near the docks as he attacks them. Grundy attacks them because he wants to be left alone, where he ends up getting knocked out by the tanks, and as he does, Aquaman attacks with a Loch Ness Monster, as Grundy goes with Aquaman. We then go to Aquaman with Grundy going to Dr. Fate's house? Ah, shit, it is. But Aquaman will give him gold if he helps him, as Dr. Fate's wife named Inza comes out to talk to them. Grundy gets his gold as Inza contacts her husband to come to them, and he then eventually does, where he introduces himself to Grundy. Dr. Fate tries to find out what Grundy's origins are, as Grundy doesn't even remember how he came to be, where Dr. Fate uses a spell to find out that Grundy was a mobster named Cyrus Gold. He did many evil things until he eventually got double-crossed, and absolutely shredded by bullets where his body was thrown into a river that turned him into Grundy decades later. Aquaman mentions that they need to begin immediately, as Grundy says that he wants his soul back, and if he gets his back, he will help Aquaman with saving Atlantis. We go back to the docks as the League arrive to find out that Aquaman fucked their shit up and took Grundy with him, as they now have to find Aquaman to see what he has to say. On their way, they find a giant sea monster attacking a cruise ship as they come in to stop it, where they struggle for a bit, but Hawkgirl manages to make a creature leave. The League then make it to Atlantis, where they see Mira, where she seems to have no idea what Aquaman's up to, but knows that he's currently with Dr. Fate. She then leaves since she has no information to share with him, and as the League leaves, Superman connects the dots with how the monster scarred him, since it must have been some magic powers. They then get to Dr. Fate's place as Hawkgirl manages to break the door down, where they see Dr. Fate and Aquaman as they're doing a spell on Grundy to give him his soul back. The League members try to stop them from doing the spell, as Hawkgirl manages to get through to them and stop the spell as they attack the League. Each of them get teleported away to different places besides Dr. Fate and Hawkgirl, as they all fight each other, such as Superman and Grundy in Egypt, where Superman annihilates Grundy. Then we see Wonder Woman fighting Aquaman on the Easter Islands, as he pulls her underwater, where we then see Hawkgirl take on Dr. Fate. As she's trying to get to him, he keeps on casting spells to try and stop her, as she recognizes that the ruins surrounding them are Theraganian. But as that happens, Aquaman arrives with Wonder Woman, where Superman arrives with Grundy, as Superman easily takes out Aquaman. When they do, they manage to get Hawkgirl to stop, as they try to get an answer out of Dr. Fate as to what's happening, where some giant skull thing comes out, where Dr. Fate says that they were trying to prevent that. This is pretty solid. It's a big surprise to see both Aquaman and Dr. Fate back, since we've only seen Aquaman once back in The Enemy Below, where they basically reinvent his character in this universe, and we haven't seen Dr. Fate since Superman the Animated Series. I do wish that we saw more of Superman with Aquaman and Dr. Fate, since he's the main character that actually knows those two characters most out of the League. Still enjoyable, but I definitely do wonder what this giant skull thing is, and if it's actually going to be a big threat in the second part. This goes above Hearts and Minds Part 2, but below Tabula Rasa Part 1. The Terror Beyond continues right where we left off as the skull thing's coming out, as Dr. Fate tries to stop it but can't contain it, where Hawkgirl comes in to help him and manages to close it off. God, that's anticlimactic. But as they close it off, Dr. Fate wonders how Hawkgirl knew this spell, but she then explains that it's a prayer on her planet, as Dr. Fate then shows the League what they need to know. They show Atlantis thousands of years ago where it got attacked by some beings called the Old Ones, as they almost wiped out all of humanity whilst being in control of the giant skull, which is called Cthulhu, where the king of Atlantis, Poseidon, used his power to forge a trident that wiped out the Old Ones from Earth. As he did, it sank Atlantis to the bottom of the ocean, since he used the island's magic to forge the trident, forcing the island down into the water while saving the planet. The Old Ones want to come back and take over, as they were going to use Grundy as a sacrifice to make the Old Ones not come back again. Hawkgirl then explains that her people worship them, and that's why she knows so much about it, where Dr. Fate says that Hawkgirl can help, but they try to find another way to beat the Old Ones, and apparently they can do this by going into their world and fighting them. Aquaman doesn't want to help at all, as Dr. Fate reluctantly lets him go back to Atlantis, where the rest of them go into their world, and as Superman's going to take a different position, Dr. Fate pulls him back in, as if he goes too far into the sky, he might get completely lost in this world, since it doesn't work like ours, so they have to stick together. Which gets contradicted a bit later. Aquaman gets back to Atlantis as he prepares his army to fight the sea creatures, since they seem to have been controlled by the Old Ones since Aquaman can't contact them anymore. We go back to the other world as they run into some screaming aliens and have to fight them off. They end up getting rid of them, where they keep on walking, as we then see the sea creatures fighting against the Atlantean army, where we then go back to the League as Hawkgirl asks Wonder Woman if she actually gets the strength when she calls to her gods. Wonder Woman says that she does, and that sometimes faith is all that we can rely on, but as they're talking they see a bunch of Old Ones going into a portal, as Wonder Woman and Superman go close to the portal. Yeah, sticking together, you're right. The rest of them go to Cthulhu, where they end up finding him and fighting some of his monsters that he sends out, where they get their asses kicked. Cthulhu interrogates Hawkgirl, where she mentions that he took the souls of many Theragarians, as Grundy manages to get inside of him, where we see Aquaman come through the portal as the monsters are going back to him. They manage to close it off as they're trying to run away, but they go to help the rest of them as they're getting their asses kicked. Grundy then manages to weaken Cthulhu, where he ends up getting to the brain where a giant monster comes out to try and stop Grundy, as he then manages to kill it pretty easily. But as he does, Grundy's weakened, so Hawkgirl manages to get to the brain and destroy it, as she then goes to tend to Grundy where he's about to die. They actually have a nice moment just before he passes, but the episode then ends as they bury Grundy, where she wonders why he was happy in his last moments, where Aquaman explains that it's faith and that you don't need to understand it. Also, they did the thing on his gravestone, Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday. I see. I'm surprised with how much I enjoyed this episode. The only reason why I really enjoyed it is because of all the character stuff, especially with Hawkgirl and Grundy, surprisingly. They seem to work together very well, even though they're barely alike, and it's just enjoyable to watch. It even works with the other characters, but as the rest of the episode goes, it's alright. You don't really care about Cthulhu at all, since it's just a typical evil alien that wants to take over the planet, but honestly that isn't really the biggest focus, since the episode knows to focus more on the characters and their relationships with one another, and it works well. Also, I just realised that Cthulhu is voiced by Rob Zombie. What a weird choice, but I love it. Goes above Tabula Rasa Part 1, but below Twilight Part 1. Secret Society starts with Shade breaking into a facility with his goons, as a guard reports it to the police, so both GL and Jean make their way to put a stop to Shade. He ends up getting into a vault where he gets some kind of chip that's worth a lot, but GL and Jean catch up to him, but he ends up getting away. As he does, Gigantic gives him a ride to a secret base, where he sees Sinestro, Parasite, Killer Frost, and Gorilla Grodd, as they call themselves the Secret Society. Surprised to see Sinestro and Parasite here, but my biggest issue is that we've only seen Sinestro once before this, where he was fighting Kyle Rayner, not Jon Stewart, so I wonder how that will work. I guess he hates Green Lanterns in general, so it'll be interesting. Anyways, we then see Shade's goons being arrested, as John talks to the press where they end up leaving, where they then talk to the rest of the League, where GL mentions that they haven't been working well together recently. He mentions that they need to practice, but Batman mentions that they don't have time, where he ends up getting outvoted. We then see the Secret Society as they're training to trust each other, since that's going to be the hardest thing to get them to do. Shade's talking to Grodd about this, but Grodd mentions that none of them are in it for the money, as Sinestro hates the Green Lantern Corps, Parasite hates Superman, which I guess since he just wants to suck up his power. Gigant is devoted to Grodd, and Killer Frost just wants to kill people. Fair enough. It's in the name, I guess. But Grodd says that Shade is a master criminal and could be a master of the world if he helps Grodd get rid of the Justice League. He explains that he's been spying on them to find out what they've been doing and to study them so he can hopefully find a way to beat them. As that's going on, we see Superman training in an old western town where Jean and Hawkgirl help, and we also see the old Zeta designs. Nice little Easter egg. Whilst the League are training, the Secret Society go to an island owned by Morgan Edge where they're trying to get something from him. They break past the main walls of the island, where we go back to the League training as they take out more robots, where Batman leaves after their training is done, where he says to call them if it's important. We then see the Secret Society as they go into Morgan's house, where they fight off a bunch of guards and even a few helicopters as they then manage to get to Morgan, where he tries to get away on a boat. Grodd asks him where the canisters are as he leads the Society to them, as they end up pouring them out into the ground, where it's revealed to be Clayface. Back at the training grounds, the Justice League are arguing with one another, as GL mentions that Superman could have taken less of those punches, where he makes the point that he should take the punches since he's the invulnerable one. That's where the other members get shitty since they think Superman doesn't trust them, but he mentions that he does trust them, but they aren't all equal. GL cuts them off and says that they'll keep doing this until they get it right, where we go to Batman in the Batwing as he sees on the news what the Secret Society did on Morgan's Island. Back at the Secret Society's base, Clayface is grateful for letting him free, but he just wants to be human again, and I'm glad that it's Ron Perlman back as Clayface. But Grodd says that he could have the best of both worlds, where he could be human again as he mentions that he made Giganta into a human, since they used to be a gorilla. As that's going on, Batman interrogates someone to find out what was in the canisters, as he finds out it was Clayface, where we then see him run into Clayface as the Secret Society come in, as Batman wounds Clayface. Clayface mentions that he wouldn't come in without reinforcements, as Batman says,
Wish I'd thought of that. Oh wait, I did.
I love that line. So the League fights the Secret Society, where the villains eventually beat the Justice League, then make a run for it as they escape the factory. GL gets shitty about their teamwork, where the League start to argue with one another, and we almost got a cheeky little swear word in before Jean cuts them off.
It's not just the men you stuck up.
Stop it! Stop it right now!
Jean tells them that they took him in as his new family, but what's the use of it if it diminishes them as individuals? He then says that he lost one family and he'll survive losing another one too, as the episode then ends with all the League's members walking their separate ways. Oh shit, the League split up. But this episode's good. It's just a good episode overall, and this is yet another episode where the characters and the drama that unfolds between them is the highlight. It's not just on the hero's side either. It's interesting to see how a new group of villains work together too, since they seem to be working much better as a team compared to the Justice League in this episode. I just wonder where this will all go in the second part, but as this episode goes, it's above Twilight Part 1 but below Only a Dream Part 1. The second part picks up with some thugs walking out of a strip club, as the Flash tries to get answers from them but has no luck, as the Secret Society sees that they've all split up. Grodd thanks the Flash for giving him his mental powers as it helped him split up the League, as they're now going to take them out one by one. As the Flash finally gets answers from one of the thugs, he goes to where the thug tells him to as Sinestro's waiting for him where they start to fight. Whilst they're fighting, Batman gets a call from the Flash telling him that he needs his help, where Batman's skeptical about it and tells him to meet at the old train station platform. Batman gets there as the Flash says that he doesn't need his help, where Batman tells the Flash to catch, where he gets impaled by the Batclaw, where he's revealed to be Clayface, as Batman says that the real Flash would have been too fast for that. Clayface gets knocked down as Sinestro tries to stop Batman, but he gets his ass kicked too, and this is yet another fantastic line.
What gave me away? You overplayed your part, yo.
But the rest of the Secret Society walks out, as they seem to have captured Batman as well. We then go to Hawkgirl and GL, as Hawkgirl tells GL that he wanted them to just be soldiers and not individuals, as he says that he does care and that he would give his life for her. She says that he doesn't know what he's saying as she flies away, and as she does, GL sees one of the drones and destroys it to find out that it's a camera, as he tries to locate where the transmission's coming from. Eventually, GL contacts Hawkgirl to tell her that something's going on, and that she needs to meet him at the training grounds. So she gets there and sees Wonder Woman, Superman, and Jean, as they say that the other members that aren't there told him to meet them there, as a sentry gun attacks them. Jean destroys it, but all the training drones attack the League, as they then take him down, but as they do, the Secret Society attack. They fight for quite a while until the League's members are defeated, besides GL, since they don't know where he went. We then see the League being held in a base as Clayface says that they should kill him right now, but Grodd tells them to wait since they want to kill them in front of everybody, as we see GL sneaking around as Grodd knows that he's there. GL manages to fight the Secret Society for a little bit until he ends up getting knocked out by Clayface. We then go to an American football game as the singer's performing, where the Secret Society crash the show. They get out of their ship to show that they have the Justice League held captive, as they're going to be the new world's leaders and are going to kill the Justice League. As Grodd tells Clayface to flip the switch, He destroys it to reveal that it's actually Jean, as the League then fights a secret society in front of the whole stadium. It's another fight that lasts quite a long time, but this time around the Justice League just manages to take out most of the secret society, but Grodd decides to make a run for it. Superman then manages to stop him after Grodd tries to mess with his mind, but the League actually acknowledges how they treated each other before, where GL just says that all they can do is say sorry and move on. Honestly, just as good as the last episode. I will say it's quite interesting how Grodd figures out that he needs to split up the Justice League just to get an upper hand on them, and it seems to work extremely well. They would have won if Killer Frost actually froze the right person, but besides that, it's just more development on how the League was split apart and how they'll eventually get back together in the end. Even though when they get back they haven't fully healed back to the way they were before, which is actually really good. Goes above the first part but below Only a Dream Part 1. Hereafter starts with the cult as they want revenge on some person, where we see that the hooded figures are Toyman, Livewire, Weather Wizard, Calabac and Metallo, but they're all voiced by different people, which is honestly so disappointing, especially not having Malcolm McDowell back as Metallo. But it's just one of those things where it doesn't sound right, and because of that, it's just so distracting. Then the original voice actor out of those characters is Calabac, with Michael Dorn providing the voice. Anywho, they all want revenge on Superman, and as they attack Metropolis, the Justice League arrives to stop them. They put up a fight against them where Wonder Woman and the Flash manage to fling the only weakness to Superman away. But the League keep on fighting, and this is honestly so badass of Batman to take on Calabac just to give the time for Superman to come in and knock his ass out. But as Superman arrives, Toyman uses a giant toy robot to shoot a blast at Superman, but they manage to avoid a few shots since it absolutely vaporizes everything in its path. Toyman sees Wonder Woman knocked out and then tries to shoot her as Superman sacrifices himself to save her, as Batman's trying to help Wonder Woman up, and holy shit, Toyman did it. Everyone just pauses for a few seconds after he did that, where Wonder Woman just destroys Toyman's robot and then is about to beat his ass up as the Flash stops her. We then skip a few days as we see the League getting ready for Superman's funeral, where Jean and the Flash talk about how the League will survive without Superman since they would have lost so many battles without his help. We then go to Batman as he's watching the vaporization of Superman over and over again, trying to find anything, but Alfred tells him that it's time for the funeral. Batman says that he isn't going as he isn't dead, because of the lack of evidence of his death, as matter can't be completely gone, but there's absolutely none of it to be seen at the crime scene. We then see the funeral as Lex shows up, where Lewis fucking slaps him since he wanted him gone all this time, but he came here just to gloat. Lex says that he will actually miss him too as Lewis breaks down in his arms, where we then see the service while Jean's giving a speech about Superman. They then walk his grave through Metropolis to his resting place as Batman's watching from the rooftops. I'd be absolutely lying if I said it didn't get me in the feels, because it definitely did. We then go to the Watchtower as the League are remembering the good memories of Superman and having a laugh with one another, where they then decide to actually talk about who would replace Superman, as they decide to ask Batman, but he tells them that he's busy. When he hangs up, Lobo breaks in and asks what's with the long faces, as he says that they're going to be working together. Jean tells them to leave, as GL fills them in on who Lobo actually is, as he says that he's going to replace Superman, but of course they tell him that he's obviously not filling in his spot. They end up fighting whilst Batman visits his grave and starts to admit that he might have been wrong about him not being dead, where we get a fucking fantastic speech.
I've got some things to say. I should have said them when you were here, but despite our differences, I have nothing but respect for you. I hope you know that. You showed me that justice doesn't always have to come from the darkness.
But unfortunately he gets cut off by a bunch of different villains causing havoc in Metropolis. Batman goes in to stop him as he manages to stop Deadshot and Copperhead, but gets knocked out by Livewire. We go back to the Watchtower as Lobo gets defeated, where they find out that Metropolis is in shambles, but they decide to go and bring Lobo with them and tell him that he needs to do exactly what they say. The League comes in to stop the villains as Batman then wakes up to help them out. They manage to beat them whilst Lobo's fighting Calabac, and I don't know why, but this is hilarious. Anyways, Lobo has Calabac under a bunch of cars as the League tells him to stop, but we then go to Superman as he seems to be somewhere else, and that's how the episode ends. This episode is really good, but they could have left some things out too. The death of Superman and how all the characters handle it is honestly masterfully done, but I really don't think we needed Lobo in this episode. I love Lobo since he's a fun character, but he isn't needed in an episode like this where the League's mourning the loss of Superman. I'd rather see the League as they are, trying to take on villains and struggling, which would actually show how much of a loss Superman is to the Justice League, not just emotionally, but as a powerful member of the League. It's just such an emotion-heavy episode, where it kind of loses it near the end where Lobo's introduced, which holds it back from being the best episode of the show. So it goes above Twilight Part 2, but below A Better World Part 1. Part 2 continues where we left off as Superman wakes up in the middle of nowhere, where he seems to have no powers at all since he's on a planet where they have a red sun. He then gathers some supplies from the cars that are around him as he takes one of them and drives around to see if there's anything on this planet. Superman then sets up camp where he already has a beard, as he then sees some alien wolves as they approach him. He makes them leave after lighting a stick on fire, and after that he manages to forge himself a sword with the supplies he's gathered as he makes his way around the planet. The car ends up completely running out of gas, so he decides to leave it as more wolves approach him. When they do, he gets his sword ready but loses it as they bite him a few times, as he manages to kill the top dog, where he uses the other wolves to make himself a sled. He tries to contact the League again as he sets up camp for the night, but has no luck. He goes out the next day as he then lets the wolves leave, as he has to climb down a mountain. He climbs down to find himself in a jungle, as he keeps on walking through where he finds the watchtower destroyed, where he manages to get in. As he walks in, he tries to find out what happened to the League, as Vandal Savage comes out and says that the League died. Vandal tells Superman that this is actually thousands of years in the future, as the beam Toyman hit Superman with sent him into the future. Vandal's the only human alive since he's immortal, and that the cockroaches rule the Earth now as well as him. Vandal tracked his signals that he'd been sending out with his earpiece, as they then go to Vandal's place but stop at Superman's grave on the way. He explains that he shouldn't have done all of this, as he apparently destroyed the world a few months after Superman disappeared, and after he did, he managed to completely destroy the Earth and mess with where it sits in the solar system. Superman then fights Vandal but stops as he's about to throw a stone on his head, where he then decides to cook them something to eat. Vandal's place has a lot of things as he shows them off, so that night at Vandal's place, Superman decides to get up and walk around as he finds a time machine that Vandal was working on, where he wakes up Vandal as he says that he didn't bother finishing it. Superman mentions that he could go back in time to stop Vandal from taking over the world, as they then decide to work on the time machine to get it working. They can't get it working without the right power supply, so they have to steal the power cell from the cockroaches that they use as an artificial sun. They sneak their way in until they're spotted where the cockroaches attack them, but they manage to get to it as Superman falls into it, where he gains his powers back from the strength of the light. When they get back to the time machine, it manages to work, as Vandal says that Superman needs to stop him, as he needs to stop Vandal from stealing a piece of dwarf star matter from a person named Ray Palmer in 4 days. So Superman then goes back in the time machine as he manages to go back to where the League stops Lobo from putting cars on Calabac. As they stop Lobo, Deadshot shoots a missile at Batman, where Superman stops it as the League seem to be happy that he's back, where Superman briefly explains what happened. Superman then gets Lobo to leave, as he takes the League to do a certain job, where we go back to Vandal in the future as the world seems to be restored as he fades away. Fuck, this is even better. It isn't as emotional as the first part, but it's really interesting to see Superman in a world where he doesn't have powers, and has to fend for himself to stay alive. I will say, I actually like the twist that Vandal's the only one alive, and that he actually caused the destruction of Earth and all of humanity. It's a surprising twist, but I really like it. I will say, the last episode had higher highs than this one, but overall this episode start to finish is really good. So I'd have to say that this episode's above the first part, but below A Better World Part 1. Wild Card starts with the Justice League at the Watchtower, as GL and Hawkgirl are looking through bank transfers and have a little bit of a moment as Batman calls in the Justice League. We go to Batman as he interrogates a man in his office, as he tells him that he can't sell airtime to the Joker, since the person he was working with was the Joker under a different alias. But they're too late as we see the Joker take over every TV station, as he has a special broadcast for everyone. Hell yeah, 2-part of the Joker is the main villain? I'm down. So we then see that the Joker has a time bomb set up somewhere in the Vegas Strip, and only the Justice League can stop it, and if anyone else tries to stop it, the Joker will set the bomb off. The Joker sets up a timer for the bomb, as he mentions that he has hundreds of cameras around the Vegas Strip, so he'll be able to see absolutely everything that the League are doing, as Batman's the first one to arrive. The rest of the League come in as the Joker's keeping tabs on where all the League's members are, as Superman quickly finds the bomb. The Joker prepared for him as he has the Royal Flush Gang, which isn't the same as the Batman Beyond Royal Flush Gang, but this time around they're voiced by all the Teen Titans main cast, which is cool. The gang ends up attacking Superman and the Flash as they're trying to defuse the bomb, where the gang gives them a good fight. They knock out both of them where Batman, GL and Hawkgirl come in to help fight the gang as they run away. They fight outside the casino as the Joker then tells the backstory of the Royal Flush Gang, where they were all government test subjects since they're all gifted with superpowers. 10 feels no pain and is super strong, King can shoot beams, Jack is basically Mr. Fantastic, Queen can move things with her mind and then doesn't say much about Ace. He then mentions that the government wanted to turn them into weapons, as he then took them from the military base as they seemed happy to be freed. The Joker took them on as basically his own superpowered goons, as he then tunes into Batman as he's trying to defuse a bomb, and accidentally manages to make the time go down to 5 seconds left. It blows up but only confetti comes out, where they find out that it was a fake. Superman looks around and finds out that there's actually 25 bombs on the strip, and they don't know which ones are real until they get close enough to them, as they then have to go and defuse the real bombs. As Batman gets to a casino, Jack gets the jump on him as they then go to the Flash where he has to defuse a bomb, but gets Batman's help whilst he's fighting Jack. Batman ends up talking the Flash through it, as we then go to Superman as he's fighting Ten whilst trying to defuse a bomb. Whilst they're fighting, we see GL fighting Queen as he's trying to defuse a bomb. Hawkgirl comes in to help GL as they stop her and defuse the bomb, as the Joker kind of hits it on the head with them having feelings for one another. But as they're defusing it, the Joker sets it off as GL shoots Hawkgirl away from the explosion whilst he's inside. Damn, this episode just ended all of a sudden, but it's good. It's just a really fun, not so serious episode, until we're left with that cliffhanger at the end. I really like the idea of bringing the cast of Teen Titans in as the villains for the Justice League to face off against. It's just some nice fan service stuff. There isn't too much to say about the episode since it's honestly just really enjoyable and doesn't take itself that seriously. Goes above Tabula Rasa Part 2, but below Only a Dream Part 2. We continue Wildcards pretty much where we left off, as Batman sees the explosion where he's still fighting Jack, and asks if GL's okay through the comms. Whilst he does that, Hawkgirl finds GL unconscious, as she tries to give him CPR, and then manages to shock him back to life. The Joker's sick of the drama stuff, so he decides to cut back to Superman as he punches Ten away, with enough time to defuse the bomb. He does, and when he lands they just keep on fighting, but we then see Hawkgirl take GL to get him some medical help, as Jack's still trying to get Batman. The Joker then says that there's one bomb left with about 4 minutes left, as the Flash manages to find it as King attacks him. Flash manages to wrap him up, but as he does, Ten punches him, and as the two fight the Flash, we see Batman interrogating Harley, since she was in the helicopter that just crashed. Batman makes her jealous by saying that the Joker seems to be a bit closer to Ace, whilst she's out here not with him. We go back to the Flash as Superman comes in to help him, but King ends up leaving since there's only a minute until the bomb goes off, whilst Ten stays to fight Superman. Superman keeps Ten occupied whilst the Flash has to defuse a bomb, with the Joker making fun of him as he decides to take the bomb just before it blows up and take it out of the city. We go to the Joker as he says that it was a stunt to get as many viewers as possible, where he reveals that everyone watching will be insane because of Ace's powers, where he then tells her backstory. She accidentally made her parents go insane because of her powers, where she was taken to the government facility at a very young age. Eventually at the facility they were afraid of her, as they used a headband that would stop her powers whilst in the facility, but now that she's free she can send out thought waves to make you go insane, in person or even through the satellite signals. Ace uses her powers as the Joker explains that millions of people watching are currently going insane, but we even see Superman and the Flash being affected by it, where we then see many different people being affected by it in many different ways. As that's going on, Harley comes in cracking the shits at the Joker, but he manages to sway her and then cracks the shits at Harley for leading Batman right to them. When Harley gets knocked down, Batman gets the jump on the Joker, but Ace uses her powers on him, where Batman loses his mind and starts seeing a bunch of random things around him. Whilst Batman's losing his mind, the Joker keeps kicking him, and as the Joker's gonna kill Batman, he grabs the headband from the Joker's suit. When he does, Ace stops where she confronts the Joker, and then makes him go completely insane to the point where he's nearly unresponsive. Batman then asks where Ace is gonna go, as she says nowhere but just walks out of the building. We then go to the Watchtower as GL's resting, where she says that she'll stay with him overnight and apologizes to Batman for how she spoke to him earlier when taking GL to get some medical help. He understands that you can't leave a man behind, and she then gets off the call where she talks to GL, where he says that they need to talk. He then explains that she knows how he feels about her, and that she feels the same way, where she says that it's crazy because they work together. She tries to come up with many different reasons as to why they can't, and even saying that they're so different, where GL just says that he sees a man and a woman, as she allows him to take off her helmet. When he does, the episode ends with the two kissing each other, and all I can say is, finally!
Well, it's about time.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, and oh, that's pretty funny actually. This has been built up for so long, and to see it pay off is so satisfying. This episode is really damn good though. It's pretty much the same as the first part, but we actually get to see why Ace wasn't mentioned in the first part, since she was a part of the plan after the bombs were defused, where she would make everyone go insane. Also, it's a big surprise that even the Joker was shit scared of what Ace could do, even with how insane the Joker already is, since she manages to make him basically dead at the end. So I really wonder how he'll come back the next time he shows up. Probably in Justice League Unlimited, but we'll find out. Anyways, this goes above Twilight Part 2, but below Hereafter Part 1. This is really the only episode in the whole show that isn't a 2 or a 3-parter? Well, let's see if it's any good. Spoilers it is. So Comfort and Joy starts with Jean and the League in the snow, as he's trying to save two planets from colliding into one another. They manage to create a device that puts a force field around the planet that they're on, as they're pulled away from the other planet. The Flash and Superman say that it's a nice way to start the Christmas break, as GL and Hawkgirl stay on the planet. The Flash asks John if he has any holiday plans, but he doesn't, as Superman says that he needs to do something about that. We then go to GL as he's snowboarding with Hawkgirl watching him, but she wonders why he likes snowboarding since he flies around a lot. He explains that it reminds him of when he was young, where his grandma would take him sledding, where he then shows Hawkgirl other things that he likes about the snow, such as building a snowman and making snow angels. She doesn't seem interested, so GL throws a snowball at her, where they then have a snowball fight with each other, as we then go to the Central City orphanage as the Flash comes to visit them. The kids pull him towards the TV as their favourite show called Rubber Duckies is on, as the Flash goes to get the kids the toy of their show. Whilst that's going on, Superman takes John to his parents' place, since he doesn't want him to spend the holidays on monitor duty in the watchtower. They go inside as John introduces himself, where the Kents mention that they're no stranger to aliens, since he mentions that he was a Martian. When inside, they figure out that John can stay in Kara's room since she's on a ski trip with Barbara. As Clark shows John the bedroom, he thinks it's odd to see Clark this way since he doesn't see this side of him. We go back to Jill and Hawkgirl as they're having a massive snowball fight, as Hawkgirl gives up where she doesn't see the obsession with the holidays. She does mention after a victory on Thanagar that they would go somewhere to do it, besides on Thanagar, as GL says that they'll go there and do what she wants. Then we go back to the Flash as he's trying to find the rubber ducky, but can't find it at any stores, so he decides to go to the factory and get one directly from there, as he gets the last one from the owners of the factory. We then go back to Clark at his parents' place where Martha gives John a gift, even though he doesn't have a gift for her, where she says that him being there is the only gift she needs. He gets a knitted sweater from Martha as he seems to be happy with it and says that he can grow into it. Then we see GL and Hawkgirl arrive on the planet, as she mentions that this is where she goes to celebrate, and they do that by going to some kind of alien nightclub. They get themselves a drink, as she mentions that one more thing will make this night perfect, and that's getting into a bar fight where she hits someone in the hand with her mace and frames it as GL, so a giant brawl starts. We then go back to the Flash as he gets back to Central City, where he sees Ultra Humanite destroying a museum, so he goes in to stop him. He ends up doing so, but when he does, Humanite accidentally destroys the toy, but the Flash is upset about it since he was going to give it to the orphans. He gets shitty with Humanite, but as the Flash lets Humanite shoot him, he just knocks the Flash out and takes him to his lab, where he decides to fix the toy for him in honor of the holidays. Then we go back to John at the Kent's place, where he sees how happy they all are, and he decides to fly into Smallville where he sees all the Christmas decorations and how happy the people are this time of the year. He overhears a girl thinking to herself that Santa's real and that he'll eat the cookies this year, where John decides to do it instead as she hears him on the roof. John goes to the church as he hears people singing carols inside, as we then go back to GL and Hawkgirl in the bar fight. As the big one's walking up to them and after knocking them down, we see the Flash arrive back at the orphanage, where he gets Humanite to help him bring in the toy for them. He quote-unquote improved it by making it tell stories with his voice, as the Flash then hands him into prison, and as a thanks, the Flash leaves Humanite a Christmas tree, where he seems to appreciate it. We then see the aftermath of the bar fight, where Hawkgirl kisses John on the cheek and says Merry Christmas. After that, the episode ends at the Kent's place, as Clark and his parents hear John singing in Kara's room whilst patting the cat. This is a really nice, light-hearted episode. It's really just a big change of pace for this show to actually see the League's members taking a step back from crime fighting, and instead just stepping back and seeing what they do over the holidays. I really like how the Flash managed to convince Humanite to help him repair the toy, since he got the toy for a very good reason, and it's just great stuff. It's also neat to see how John gets to understand the meaning of the holidays by visiting Clark's parents, and seeing firsthand how people celebrate and get together over that time of year. Sometimes the simpler and more lighthearted episodes are the really good ones, so this goes above Tabula Rasa Part 2, but below Wildcards Part 1. Oh shit, the last 3 episodes and it's a 3-parter? So Starcross starts with the League watching over the President as he gets in a car outside the White House, where they heard that terrorists are apparently targeting the President. We then go to an army base as one of them alerts the general about something coming in, but the fighter jets can't see it until they shoot missiles at it. When they do, they see the ship has absolutely annihilated their jets, as the League then gets shot at where Hawkgirl knows what kind of ship it is. The League can't take it down, but a giant laser from the sky comes out and takes it out, as we then see a giant ship above it where one small ship comes out and lands. When it does, we see a Thanagarian man walk out with some of his men walking behind him. Hawkgirl knows who this is, and his name is Commander Hero Telak, as she was his lieutenant, where Hero says that they need to talk to the world's leaders. He mentions that Earth's defenses are lacking, and that they won't be able to fight off the threats that come in, which is apparently the Gordanians, some lizard-type people that have been at constant war with the Thanagarian people. Telak says that they need their help to stop them, and after that, GL gets shitty at Hawkgirl since she was a spy for their army. She tells him that she was just being a good soldier and that he should understand, where Telek comes in and kisses Hawkgirl, where GL's shocked. Telek introduces himself to GL, where Hawkgirl then says that the two of them are basically engaged to one another, and damn, gotta feel bad for GL. But he cuts the conversation off and walks away, as we then go to Superman and Wonder Woman talking to the world's leaders, as they're discussing if they can trust them or not, where some of them are skeptical about why they just came out of the sky to help them. GL's standing at the back as he obviously isn't enthusiastic about them being here, and as he walks out during their discussion, Batman mentions that women can be the most mysterious creatures in the universe. Because of that, Batman says to GL that he shouldn't be too hard on himself, since he didn't know that she was taken, and that he figured out that they were a thing. He then mentions that these things happen, and that he needs to deal with it, as Jean tells GL that he knows how painful it can be, as even the Flash comes out and realizes that they were a thing. Jean tries to cheer up GL, as he says that he should have read her mind, but he mentions that he can't, and he can't even read any of the Thanagarians' minds, which is strange. We then go to Telek and Hawkgirl as they catch up, but as he's going to kiss her, one of his men tells him that the humans are trying to contact him. He listens in as Superman tells him that the world's leaders have agreed to his conditions, as he tells Hawkgirl that he should come with him, and as she walks off, Telek says to Krager in command that he'll be keeping a close eye on her. We then go to a base that's being built out in the desert, and as GL's helping, Hawkgirl tries to talk to him where he brushes her off. Superman finds out from Telek that they're actually building a force field around Earth to protect it from the Gordanians. As that's going on, we go to Batman and Wonder Woman as they're examining a Gordanian body that was on the ship, where Batman thinks that they've been set up since this body's been dead for quite a while and that its liver was frozen. We then see the world's leaders going onto Telek's ship, as one of them starts to sneak around the place, and whilst that's going on we see Jean and Superman helping the Thanagarian people build the base. Then we see the person sneaking around as Telek reports to their leader that they will be ready in a few days, as one of the guards finds him, where we find out that it was Bruce in disguise as he knocks the guard out and then makes a run for it. He throws down some smoke to throw his disguise off, as he tells Wonder Woman through the comms that he was right about the Thanagarian people, where he gets knocked out. When he gets knocked out, Telek says to deploy his forces now, where Wonder Woman tells Superman that the Thanagarians are lying as they attack the Watchtower where Wonder Woman gets knocked out. The League tries to get to Wonder Woman by getting on the Javelin, but it gets destroyed, so now the rest of the League's members have to fight the Thanagarian army, as the US Army comes in to help them as well. The army gets completely surrounded, and as the League fights the Thanagarian people, Hawkgirl's just watching it all unfold since she's conflicted between the two. The League's members get trapped in there with them since they activated the force field, as Hawkgirl tells GL to stop fighting. When she does, she knocks GL down with her mace. Well, hot damn, this is good. There's really a lot that happens in this episode, but damn, it's a surprise to see that Hawkgirl was actually a spy for the Thanagarian army all along. Also, you really feel bad for GL, since Hawkgirl and GL started being a thing only a few episodes ago, and now all of that's just been completely shattered. I do wonder where the second and third part will go, so as this episode goes, it goes above Twilight Part 2, but below Wildcards Part 2. Starcross continues with the military base, as every single military base worldwide is completely inactive, as the US General tries to talk to the other countries' leaders to try and stop the Thanagarians, but their signal's interrupted by Telek. He comes out and says that they are the world's leaders now, and that everyone will follow their law, and if they go against them, they will basically die. We then see the world's leaders as Telek tells them that the League has been defeated, and that they will have to follow their rule now or they will die, where they're all free to go. Hawkgirl then asks Telek what he will do with the League, as Krager then shows her where he has them captive. He mentions that it would have been hard to breach the Watchtower without her access codes, as he thanks her for giving them to him. He then tries to get Hawkgirl to kill the League, as Hawkgirl then tells him that Earth's people will rally up against them if she does so she hands him the gun then walks away. One of the guards comes in to give Wonder Woman her food, as she manages to convince him to feed her since she's tied up, but she manages to get out of her cell and free the other League members. They have to keep on fighting more and more Thanagarian men, as they eventually make their way out as one of the men accidentally shoots a hole in the ship as the League fly away. Telek finds out that the Justice League escaped, as he has search teams everywhere trying to find them, where the League is sneaking their way around. They manage to sneak into a clothing store, where they come up with the idea to take off their costumes and disguise themselves as normal people, and this is honestly a great moment.
Show off.
Red hair. It suits you.
You think? Change, now.
So the League split up in groups of two as Bruce tells them to meet at Wayne Manor, even though it will take them a while to get there. We then go to Telek as he says that their project will be ready in a few days, as Hawkgirl seems upset at the fact that the humans are treated like slaves, as she finds out that his real plans were to create a hyperspace bypass and not a force shield. She gets shitty that he lied to her, where he then shows her his plan to get around the Gordanians' planet and attack them from behind, but when they do that, Earth will be destroyed. We then go to some of the Thanagarian men, as they figure out that the Justice League have disguised themselves as normal people, and as they find that out, Diana saves some people from being crushed to death, as Diana and Bruce have to run from some Thanagarian soldiers. They end up being led into a restaurant as this man that owns it helps them disguise themselves, and to make themselves not look suspicious whilst the men are questioning the owner, they decide to make out as the man says that everyone's been in here for a long time. But as the men leave, we get a funny moment between the two.
Sorry.
Don't be.
But as that's going on, we see GL and the Flash as they're trying to board onto a train. They're stuck in line since 2 Thanagarian soldiers are at the front, but Clark and John see them stuck in the line. So to distract the Thanagarian soldiers, Clark decides to question them since he's a reporter, and John acts like a photographer. It gives GL and the Flash the time to get onto the train without them noticing, where Clark and John are told to go away as they leave. We then go to Hawkgirl as Telek talks to her, since she seems to be a bit conflicted, where she says that there must be another way to do the mission. He says that they can't because if they tried another way it could take them another few years to do it, so he says that he needs to do it immediately since the Gordanians are dangerous, and he then says, "Do you remember what they did to him?" as he reveals some scarring on his face. Telek gets shitty with her as he then says that she doesn't know him anymore, but Krieger tells Telek that they've lost the Justice League and are disguising themselves as normal people, and suggests that maybe Hawkgirl knows where they are. She chokes him as she threatens him because of what he said, but she lets him go and walks away, as Krieger tells Telek that she never even answered the question. We go back to GL and the Flash as they arrive at Wayne Manor, where Alfred shows them the way to the Batcave where the rest of them are waiting. But I find this line from Alfred really funny.
Hey, that's a giant dinosaur.
And I thought Batman was the detective.
So as they're talking, Hawkgirl comes in and explains exactly why the Thanagarians are here. The League's shitty at her for showing up, as she says that she's here to help them. Then she explains that they're making a hyperspace bypass, and that the device will destroy the planet, where she gives Bruce some kind of hard drive with all the plans on it, where she explains that she didn't know the magnitude of Telek's plan. Bruce takes it, then tells her to leave, where GL talks to Hawkgirl since he's shitty at her for good reasons, where she helps him by giving his ring back, then leaving. The episode then ends with the Thanagarian army finding the location of the Justice League, since they planted a tracking device on Hawkgirl. This is really just some massive build up to the final part, and it's great. You really just get to see how big of a threat the Thanagarian army is, since they have successfully taken over the planet, and are just setting up their plans which will end up destroying the planet. It's actually neat to see the whole League having to disguise themselves by being their other aliases, especially with the Flash, since we haven't seen Wally West until this point in the show. Well, besides from a flashback, but doesn't really count. But there's a lot going on, so I really hope it pays off nicely in the last part. This episode goes above Wildcards Part 2, but below Hereafter Part 1. The final episode of Justice League, and it kicks off with Hawkgirl arriving back on the Thanagarian ship, where she's ordered to go see Telek. She's in restraints where Krieger explains to Telek that she committed treason, and shows him the tape where she tells the League their plans. When he does, he explains that he hid a tracking device on Hawkgirl, as Telek tells the guards to get her out of his sight as he punches Krieger, then orders him to take out the Justice League by letting him kill them. We go back to the League as they find out their plans, as they decide that they need to go to the mothership to destroy the device that they built which will destroy the planet. As they come up with the plan, the Thanagarian soldiers get into Wayne Manor and then make their way into the Batcave as the Justice League fight the soldiers. They manage to beat them when they decide to go through with their plans, as the Flash, John and Batman are planning to get control of the Watchtower, as the others try and go into the mothership. They plan to take the Thanagarian ship, and this moment's great.
What's this do?
That's not helping.
But they interrogate Krieger and get no answers, so Jean decides to dive into his mind and get the answers. When he does, they end up leaving on the ship, where they basically leave Krieger completely brain dead. We go back to the mothership as Telek asks why Hawkgirl would do what she did, but she explains that she can't sacrifice human lives just to save theirs. He explains that he had to make the hard choice, where she explains that the man she fell in love with wouldn't do that and find another way, as he asks if it's him or Green Lantern. He then says that he can forgive everything that she's done if she tells him what he needs to hear, basically saying that he's the one for her, where she says that she'll be the one for him if he spares Earth, or he says that maybe he'll forget about GL when Earth is destroyed. We then see Jean in disguise as Krieger, as him, Batman and the Flash make their way on board the Watchtower, whilst Telek is out with his soldiers at the mothership, with Superman, Wonder Woman and GL fighting their forces. Batman, Jean and the Flash beat the soldiers and gain access to the Watchtower, as Batman mentions that he's going to take the Watchtower out of orbit and crash it into their ship. The three of them gather all the soldiers onto an escape pod, and whilst the Flash and John are putting the final soldiers in, Batman traps them in the escape pod, as Batman says that he needs to stay on to guide the ship in. Oh shit, so Batman's gonna sacrifice himself to save the world. As that's going on, GL, Superman and Wonder Woman make their way in the mothership, where Batman has to pilot the Watchtower manually to the device. The three of them fuck shit up on the ship, as Wonder Woman lets Hawkgirl free, even though she says that she should leave her here, but we then see Telek as he takes on GL one-on-one. They end up fighting for a bit where GL seems to get the upper hand, and even knocks Telek down. But as he goes to get access to the force field control, Talek breaks the ring on his finger. Hawkgirl comes in to tell him to stop since he isn't a murderer, where he slaps her and says that he was a fool to ever love her, as she starts to fight him. We go back to Batman as he's controlling the Watchtower, where Superman tells him to get out, and as he does, the signal cuts out, so Superman goes to save him. Back at the fight, Hawkgirl tells him to stop, as she says that it isn't about him, but it's about us, where he then shocks her and says that there isn't an us anymore. GL gets back up after Hawkgirl gets knocked out and tries to fight him, and as that's going on, the Thanagarians are activating the device, where GL manages to bait Talek into destroying the force field around the device. GL and Hawkgirl then shut off the force field, as Batman guides the Watchtower towards it, as Superman saves him just before it crashes and destroys the machine. But as Superman gets up, I love this moment between the two.
Always have to be the hero, don't you? Right back at you.
So we then see more Thanagarian guards headed towards GL and Hawkgirl, as Wonder Woman comes in fighting them. As she does, Talek gets up and tells them to stop since their mission was a failure. He says that he hopes that she's happy since it will take them years to rebuild, where she tells them that they need to get started. We see the Thanagarians leave as Hawkgirl's watching it on TV at Wayne Manor, where she has a nice moment with Alfred.
Whatever they decide in that room, in my eyes, you'll always be a hero.
Whilst that's going on, we hear in on the League's discussion, where they end up voting if Hawkgirl stays or not, as Hawkgirl gets told to come into the room. When she does, she comes in and explains herself by saying that she came to this planet as a patriot, and that she was there to do her mission, but she didn't expect to care about the people on Earth and its people, and to care about the Justice League. She then decides to resign from the Justice League, and as she leaves, the Flash hugs her. Once she leaves, the Flash asks what they're going to do now since they have no Hawkgirl, no Watchtower, and no Javelin, where Jean says that they have to rebuild since Earth still needs them, as we then see GL talking to Hawkgirl as he asks where she's going to go. She doesn't know but wants to find someone with no more secrets, and he asks if it was all a secret. She says that she still loves him, and that she never lied about that as she flies away into the sunset, where GL starts to tear her up. Well, that was an ending, and an amazing one at that. I really hope that this actually affects what will happen in Justice League Unlimited, since the League have been affected so much by the events in this three-parter with Hawkgirl betraying them, and all breaking their trust with her. You have some amazing stuff here with Batman going to sacrifice himself just to save the world, and the whole dramatic triangle between GL, Talek, and Hawkgirl that all works really well. It really makes a big impression on you, since it's actually similar to what the Legacy two-parter did to Superman, where it's going to be hard for people to trust Hawkgirl again since she betrayed everyone and almost helped destroy the planet. But this episode's really fucking good, and it goes above Hereafter Part 2, but below A Better World Part 1. This season overall is actually more consistent and better than the first season, which is a massive surprise. It was yet another season where every single episode was at least good, but the best episodes of this season are some of the best in the whole show. If you ask me, this season has even higher highs than the last, especially with A Better World, Hereafter, and Starcrossed. Even the only singular episode story in this show, Comfort and Joy, is good, since you just get to see how the League celebrate the holidays. It's just so surprising to see how good the quality of these episodes are overall, and I think it's thanks to these shows only having 52 episodes, which worked well with Superman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. I really like how the League develops a lot throughout this season, and that is obviously most evident in the last 3 episodes of the show, where Hawkgirl betrayed them and the Justice League need to deal with it and beat the Thanagarian army. I just hope that it has a lasting effect into Justice League Unlimited. With that, I finally finished Justice League. What an absolute slam dunk of a show. It's honestly amazing how they managed to come out of the gate swinging and really give us an awesome Justice League animated show. I will say it's interesting to have Hawkgirl be a part of the main Justice League instead of Aquaman. But I think they did it since it was apparently like a studio or a network mandate to make one of the Justice League members turn evil or go rogue. I'm pretty sure there's more information about that in a Watchtower database video, but if I find it, links in the description. But before I say my full opinions on the show in general, let's rank every single episode in the show, and at the bottom we're starting with Warworld Part 1, Warworld Part 2, Secret Origins Part 1, The Brave and the Bold Part 1, The Brave and the Bold Part 2, Eclipse Part 1, Eclipse Part 2, Secret Origins Part 2, Secret Origins Part 3, The Night of Shadows Part 1, Paradise Lost Part 1, In Blackest Night Part 1, Night of Shadows Part 2, Maid of Honor Part 1, Hearts and Minds Part 1, Fury Part 1, Fury Part 2, Maid of Honor Part 2, Hearts and Minds Part 2, In Blackest Night Part 2, Metamorphosis Part 2, The Terror Beyond Part 1, Paradise Lost Part 2, Metamorphosis Part 1, The Enemy Below Part 2, The Enemy Below Part 1, Tabula Rasa Part 1, The Terror Beyond Part 2, Twilight Part 1, Secret Society Part 1, Secret Society Part 2, Only a Dream Part 1, The Savage Time Part 2, Legends Part 1, Tabula Rasa Part 2, Comfort and Joy, The Savage Time Part 3, Wildcards Part 1, Injustice for All Part 1, Only a Dream Part 2, Twilight Part 2, Starcross Part 1, Wildcards Part 2, Starcross Part 2, Injustice for All Part 2, Hereafter Part 1, Hereafter Part 2, Starcross Part 3, The Savage Time Part 1, Legends Part 2, A Better World Part 1, and finally the best episode in Justice League is A Better World Part 2. This show really came out swinging with the Secret Origins 3-parter, telling us how the League formed, and it even manages to keep the momentum up throughout the whole show. There are some downs, such as Warworld, but even with that 2-parter, it's still good overall. I like how the characters really develop over time, with the main example being JL and Hawkgirl's relationship, but surprisingly the one I wanted to see develop more is Batman and Wonder Woman. I know what you're thinking, no way, an actual love interest of Bruce that I like? That's nuts! There are little tiny bits sprinkled here and there, but it doesn't go that far, so I hope we get more of it in Justice League Unlimited. It's just extremely impressive how good this show is overall, and I gotta say, Justice League Unlimited has a lot to compete with, even though people say that JLU's better than this, but I gotta see if that's true. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing if you enjoy my videos. Also, make sure to comment your thoughts on Justice League down below in the description, and lastly, make sure to check out my Patreon and my channel memberships. It's something that helps me a lot with making these really big, long videos about TV shows, so I appreciate your support. You can support for as little as $1 a month to get early access to new videos. Hopefully, as you're seeing this when this video is out, I will start working on the JLU video, which won't take as long as this one because it is a shorter show, and I imagine I wouldn't have more to say about that show compared to this one. With that all out of the way, let's get into the shoutouts. Alright, massive thanks to Brady for supporting my channel license tier, and massive thanks to Victoria Huntley and SamM1994 for supporting my Big Boss tier. For real though, thank you all for hanging around to wait for this video, I appreciate it a lot. If you do want to support me while I have these long breaks of trying to make a big video like this, make sure to support my Patreon and channel memberships, that really helps me out a lot, as I need to put some food on the table. But anyways, I appreciate you all for watching this video, and I shall see you in the Justice League Unlimited video.